What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
2TF. Chapter 26 Crow's Cruelty, Luffy Zorov's Zango. Boss, what's going on? Boss, what's going on? Boss, what's going on? Quote. After arriving at the venue area, Zango and others gathered around Crow, looking warily at where Ron and his group were, with murderous intent in their eyes. After all, they have been dormant here for so many years, and now that the plan is about to be completed, they can also successfully clear their names and come ashore, completely making a break with the past. But now, the appearance of Ron and his team undoubtedly broke this point, and could even be said to have cut off their efforts over the past few years.
Even if they can still seize Kaya's property, if their identity is exposed, they will still be pursued by Marine in the future.
No need to worry. Seemingly reading the thoughts of Zango and others, Crow's expression was cold at the moment, and he was bloodthirsty and ferocious as he said, I originally planned to spare your lives after stealing the wealth.
But now that you know things you shouldn't know, there's no need to be merciful. Destroy the guy in front of us, and then destroy the residents of the entire island. Then we can still be at ease, and even avoid the danger of Marine discovering our identity. As soon as these words came out, Zango and others' eyes lit up.
As pirates, they are not good people. I have done so many things in the past just to be able to spend the rest of my life stably and complete the act of clearing my name.
But now since someone is causing trouble, then kill everyone on the entire island. Only in this way will everything be foolproof and no one can doubt their identity. Thinking of this, a group of people stopped talking nonsense and focused on where Ron and others were. The cold murderous intent quietly filled the air.
You guys. Seeing this, both Kaya and Usopp were dumbfounded.
Even if they had doubts before, after all, it was just one-sided words from Ron and others, so they still didn't believe it in their hearts.
But this conversation between Crow, Zango and others undoubtedly proves the authenticity of what Ron said, and it also proves that the group of people in front of them are all pirates. Scum. On the contrary, Luffy and Zoro were also furious. They planned to let Ron make his own decision on this matter, but this time Crow and others unscrupulously said that they wanted to massacre the entire island's residents, which deeply irritated the two of them. Looking at each other, Luffy said, Nami, take Usopp and Kai out of here. The rest is up to us. We're going to beat these guys as fast as we can. Good. Hearing this, Nami nodded. She doesn't have much strength, and she is even less likely to be a match for Crow and the others. If you stay now, not only will you not be able to help Ron and others, you will even become a burden and put your life in danger. Immediately, Nami turned around and pulled Kaya and Usopp away. Let's go. However, at this moment, Usopp also broke away from Nami's hand and said firmly, it is absolutely unforgivable for these guys to actually hurt Kaya.
I'm going to stay with you to defeat them and make them pay for hurting Kaya. Usopp. Hearing this, Kaya looked at Usopp complicatedly.
Including Luffy, Zoro and Nami who were on the side looked at him with admiration. Although he seemed to be a timid and bragging guy before, under the current circumstances, Usopp has obviously grown up and even become more responsible. Want to leave? FK them all, no one can let them escape. Seeing this situation, Crow's face darkened in the distance, and he immediately waved his hand and said, except for Kaya, kill everyone else. When we get Kaya's treasure, she won't have much value anymore. Yes. Hearing this, Zango and others did not hesitate. They were all excited at this moment. They picked up their weapons and ran towards the outside of the courtyard. Think I don't exist? Seeing this, Ron smiled coldly. Looking at the dozen people rushing forward, he jumped suddenly. The next second, a dark blue electric arc pulsed, and Ron's figure fell from the sky and landed directly in the crowd. Chidori Ryu discharge. Accompanied by a low cry, the sound of birds chirping was loud and clear. In an instant, the dark blue arc spread and directly covered the bodies of the dozen or so people.
In just an instant, screams could be heard continuously. It can be seen that the skin of each pirate exploded. Under the stimulation of lightning, they all collapsed on the ground, losing strength all over their bodies, and black smoke was rising from their heads. But in the blink of an eye, all the dozen pirates fell to the ground and lost their resistance. Only Crow and Zango in the distance were not affected, but they were also shocked at this moment. Seeing the electric arc that filled Ron's body, Crow swallowed his saliva and said with a jealous look, demon fruit power. And it's a demon fruit power that can control lightning? Why are you so lucky, little brat? However, Ron didn't take it seriously at this moment. He glanced at the limp pirates on the ground and locked his eyes directly on Crow. Come on.
Chloe, today is the day you die. Hey, Ron, you're going too fast. Ron, you defeated him in one fell swoop. We don't even have a match yet. It's amazing. What kind of ability is this? It actually defeated so many pirates in an instant.
At this time, Luffy, Zoro and Usopp arrived. Looking at the dozen or so slumped figures on the ground, all three of them sighed.
Especially Usopp, whose eyes were filled with horror, awe and a trace of desire at this moment. Luffy, Zoro. Seeing this, Ron's mouth twitched.
Although he can solve all this without the intervention of a few people, but since the two of them have said it, he really can't eat alone. Thinking of this, Ron pointed and praised. He has demon fruit power, it seems to be Paramecia hypnosis fruit. You three deal with him, and just leave Crow to me. Oh, demon fruit power. Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro's eyes lit up. You know, apart from Ron and Luffy, the only demon fruit power they encountered was Buggy. Now that they encountered another demon fruit power, they naturally wanted to find out. Thinking of this, the two immediately attacked Zango. I will be your opponent.
Hypnosis division, let's fight. Seeing this situation, Zango frowned. It's not a good thing that his true identity has been exposed and even known to others. However, in the face of provocation, he did not hesitate at this moment and directly faced Luffy and Zoro. Chapter 27 Defeat Crow and kill Zango. But in the blink of an eye, Luffy, Zoro and Jango were fighting together. Ron also came to the area in front of Crow at this moment, and said with a cold expression, let's take action. Otherwise you have no chance. Asshole. Hearing this, Crow gritted his teeth.
I wish I could cut Ron into pieces, but he was also extremely hesitant and uneasy inside. Crow's own strength is good, but it is only good. It is completely impossible to compare with the evil dragon Buggy, who also has a bounty of over 10 million.
Coupled with Ron's power that killed more than a dozen crew members in one shot just now, he really didn't have much confidence that he could compete with it. But under the current circumstances, begging for mercy would not be effective.
Croco knew how strong and determined Ron was in wanting to kill him. After taking a deep breath, Crow also took out his own weapon, the 10-hand blade.
To put it simply, it was like a finger tiger, but it was also as long as a short blade. When Crow took it out, the whole person was indeed like a cat ready to attack.
You kid, pay the price for your arrogance. With a cold snort, Crow moved. It can be seen that when he takes one step, his figure disappears in an instant.
Immediately afterwards, Ron felt a crisis coming. Crow had rushed into his place, and the sharp blade in his hand was heading straight towards him.
Not good. This is shaving. Seeing this scene, Ron's expression changed. There is also a description in the original work, but it is not too brilliant.
But under the current situation, with Crow's own advantages, the surprise attack with cooperation cannot be underestimated.
If it were Luffy or Zoro, they would probably suffer a big loss when faced with Crow, who used the shaving attack.
But you're not worthy of playing with speed with me. After a brief moment of surprise, Ron showed a disdainful smile. The arc of electricity wrapped around his legs, and his entire body disappeared from the spot in an instant. PFF'd. The sharp blade pierced the air, and Crow's attack landed directly on the area where Ron was before. But unfortunately, his sneak attack failed. Ron had already avoided this. This is impossible. The blow missed, and Crow had a look of disbelief on his face. After all, shaving is a skill he has practiced hard over the years.
After getting one of the Marine 6 styles, he continued to practice, and combined it with his own attacks to achieve an extremely terrifying one-hit kill. But now, his confident blow was actually avoided, and Ron's figure was not even touched. This speed is power. Crow, you are too slow. At this time, Ron's figure had appeared next to Crow. While the dark blue electric arc was beating, the chirping of birds could be heard quietly on his right hand. Chidori. With a low cry, Ron's right hand thrust out, and Chidori penetrated Crow's waist without hesitation. Ah! Screams resounded, and Crow was caught off guard and was hit directly. Blood splattered from his waist, and his face looked extremely painful and ferocious. But at this moment, Crow was extremely ruthless and did not give up. Even though he was seriously injured, he still controlled the 10 cat claws in his hand to attack Ron. There is a posture of exchanging injuries for injuries and lives for lives. Innocent. Seeing this, Ron curled his lips in disdain. Seeing that Crow's attack was coming, he increased the output of his own abilities without hesitation. Chidori Ryu. In an instant, endless dark blue arcs directly covered the area where Ron and Crow were. Ah! For a time, miserable screams could be heard. It can be seen that Crow has been completely scorched by electricity at this moment. His whole body is as black as ink and no intact flesh and blood can be seen. There is even the smell of barbecue wafting out from the dark smoke. After a while, the thousands of birds dispersed. Ron's figure took a few steps back, and Crow couldn't stabilize his body and fell to the ground. He lay there not dead, but also in a dying state. Captain Crow. Captain Crow. This scene directly made the pirates in the distance who had lost their resistance to stare with tears in their eyes. Crow was defeated. This is simply an unacceptable fact for them. The most important thing is that it is self-evident now what Crow's defeat means to them. That is, there is no possibility for any of them to escape or survive. Don't run. Stop. At this moment, a burst of urgent calls sounded. Following the sound, it can be seen that Zango has broken through the blockade of Luffy and Zoro at this moment, and fled directly towards the outside world. Obviously, after seeing Crow's fate, he was already afraid in his heart and did not even dare to stay any longer. Want to leave? I can't let you escape. Seeing this, Ron frowned. In the original book,
Zhang Nai is the only one who survives, and he also joins the Marine Corps. It can be said that this guy's potential threat is greater than Crow and others in a sense. Especially the Paramesha hypnosis fruit. Don't look at the crotch pull that Zhang uses now, but once he grows up and even reaches the point of awakening, he will definitely be a devil fruit that cannot be underestimated.
Speed Force open. With a low growl, Ron moved.
Endless lightning gathered all over his body, and his whole body moved very fast, like a bolt of lightning. It only took him 3 or 5 breaths to catch up with the escaping Jango. At this moment, Ron took action boldly, raised his hands and attacked Jango.
Double Chidori. In an instant, the sound of thousands of birds was heard.
Zango's body trembled, feeling the crisis coming from behind him, and his eyes were full of despair. The next second, Ron's arm penetrated Zango's body. With the special current intersection of the 2 Chidori, its body exploded directly after holding on for a moment, leaving not even a complete body. After successfully killing Zango, Ron raised his eyebrows.
Because after his death, a yellowed book actually flew out of his broken clothes.
This book looks very much like the Moonwalk secret book I got before. And the only Marine 6 styles technique Crow has mastered is shaving, so this secret book is probably about shaving techniques.
Nice one. Almost instantly, Ron reached out and grabbed it. When I opened it, it was no surprise that it contained records of Shao's cultivation techniques. For a moment, the corners of Ron's mouth raised and he murmured, "What a money-giving boy." Shaving, one of the most practical skills in Marine 6 styles.
If I cultivate it successfully, combined with the lightning tempering, speed force and other techniques I developed, my speed can reach a more terrifying level. In addition, this shave is one of the life-saving skills. It is a good choice for Luffy, Zoro, Nami and Usopp to practice.
Chapter 28 Usopp's True Face, Kaya's Gift of a Boat.
After reading the shaving training techniques, Ron directly kicked it into his pocket.
Then, he turned around and walked towards Kaya's residence.
When Ron came back, the pirates on the ground were already dead, including Crow, who was originally dying, but now his head was pierced by a knife.
And it was neither Luffy nor Zoro who took action.
Not even the 2 weak women Nami and Kaya, but Usopp, who has always been cowardly and loves to brag. Good guy, as expected of Usopp, god tier in the original work. If you are really cruel, you won't be merciful at all. Taking in all this scene, Ron was thoughtful. In the original work, Usopp is positioned as one of the funny, timid, and cowardly trio. But he also has countless highlight moments, and to a certain extent, he even surpasses Luffy as the protagonist, and even top combat powers such as Zoro and Sanji.
Now it seems that this is not the case. Usopp is very talented. Especially after 2 years of training, his strength is definitely not inferior to Sanji without the battlesuit. But Usopp is also very smart. He is not anxious to express himself, nor is he anxious to be in the limelight. Only when it reaches a truly decisive moment will he truly turn the tide. For example, in the battle with Doflamingo, Usopp seemed to be paddling, but when Luffy was in extreme danger, he actually awakened to the super distant vision. That kind of knowledge is definitely at the top level, and he can even predict future trends in a flash. Although the description in the original book is extremely vague, Usopp did determine Luffy's fatal crisis, and the last sniper shot directly frightened Sugar, and even completely detonated it all. Therefore, it is obvious that Usopp at this moment is his true appearance. He is not the one who is trying to be clever, nor is he the one who likes to brag. He really has courage and courage. The only pity is that his current strength is not enough to match all of this. But even so, after knowing that the person who plotted against Crow and others was his beloved woman, Usopp still couldn't help it. Just by looking at this look, he can be sure that he was the one who gave Crow and even the dozen or so pirates on the ground the last blow. Good. After being surprised, Ron quickly came to his senses. Now that it is certain that Usopp is not useless, nor is he a coward in the true sense as in the original book, Ron does not have much resistance to him getting on the ship. Moreover, a world-class sniper is really rare, and only when he grows up can he make up for the Straw Hat Pirates' shortcomings in sniping. Thinking of this, Ron went straight to the venue area, glanced at the bodies on the ground, and then walked to Kaya. "Miss Kaya, we have helped you solve the crisis and even saved your life." Bar. "Yes, it is." Hearing this, Kaya woke up from a dream. She had just been obsessed with the scene of Usopp killing these pirates, and she was a little shocked and unbelievable in her heart. But now when she saw Ron, Kaya didn't dare to neglect him. Although Usopp killed this group of people, it was actually Ron who defeated them, even leaving them without any resistance. Otherwise, Usopp would not have been able to get a cheap last hit. Very good. With a calm smile, Ron said without any nonsense, "When we came here this time, our ship encountered Sea Kings, and our ship was already broken when we arrived at the island. I heard that Miss Kaya's family has a very nice boat. I wonder if Miss Kaya is willing to sell it to us." No direct request. Ron believed that Kaya in front of him was not an idiot. As the only daughter of a rich man, it is impossible not to have any wisdom. Sure. Not surprisingly, Kaya immediately understood what Ron meant. Moreover, Ron and others are pirates and will leave as soon as they get the ship, instead of plotting to kill her and seize her wealth like Crow and others. Thinking of this, Kaya said with gratitude, Kaya's life was saved by all of you. If it weren't for your help, the consequences would have been disastrous. Kaya has always admired strong men like you since she was a child. Unfortunately, my body is too weak to go to sea. Since you are short of a ship, Kaya is willing to give the Mary to you. I hope you can take Kaya's adventurous heart and go sailing on the sea. Done. Hearing this, Ron also had a smile on his face. I have to say that Kaya is very smart, at least very good at dealing with people. Very good. Kaya, are you sending us a ship? Yeah, then we don't need to buy a boat. The remaining Bailey can buy a lot of meat and wine. Before Ron could speak, Luffy and others on the side also took the lead in cheering. They didn't know the subconscious behind the conversation between Ron and Kaya. They just knew that Kaya was going to send a boat, and it sounded like a very good boat. Of course it's true. Looking at Luffy and others who were not scheming, Kaya also showed a knowing smile at this moment. Immediately afterwards, she said, now that the matter here is settled, let's go celebrate. But there is no one in my family to cook anymore. Let's go to the tavern to celebrate. Good. Good. When they heard that there was food, Luffy and others nodded. Immediately afterwards, the group of people quickly walked towards the direction of the village. On the way, Usopp was the first to leave. He was going to inform the people in the village that the pirates had been eliminated. The meal lasted until late at night. Usopp, do you want to join my pirate team and go on adventures with us? After finishing a piece of meat, Luffy burped and looked at Usopp at the side with bright eyes. Luffy also quite approves of Usopp. Especially his sniping skills, which Usopp showed off at night, are indeed outstanding. After hearing this, Usopp did not refuse directly as in the original work, and even invited Luffy and others to become his crew. Instead, he fell into deep thought. Nothing else, because he remembered Kaya's words in the afternoon. Worship the strong. These 4 simple words are extremely far away for Usopp at this moment. Brother Ron, can you take me home? At this time, Kaya suddenly stood up, walked to Ron's side and said, although the pirates are dead and everyone in the village has helped me pack up my house, I'm still a little scared. Chapter 29 Mu Chang's Kaya finally meets the Mary. Good. Hearing this, Ron glanced at Kaya, a little surprised that she actually asked him to deliver it. With a vague glance at Usopp, whose expression changed a little not far away, Ron stood up from his seat and said, Miss Kaya, come with me. Thank you. Upon hearing the answer, Kaya suddenly smiled. Immediately afterwards, she said hello to Luffy and others, agreed to go see the ship tomorrow morning, and then followed Ron towards the outside world. Along the way, Ron didn't speak. Kaya didn't have too many words. Soon, the two arrived at the manor. Miss Kaya, here we are. After arriving at the door, Ron turned to look at Kaya and said, since you're already home, I'll take my leave first. After saying that, Ron turned around without hesitation. Although he didn't know why Kaya was looking for him, he vaguely felt that the latter had a purpose. Brother Ron, wait, as expected, after seeing Ron about to leave, Kaya quickly said, Brother Ron, I have something I want to ask you. Can I come in and talk to you? Can. After taking a deep look at Kaya, Ron didn't refuse. After shrugging, Ron followed Kaya with a smile on her face and walked towards the house. Soon, the two came to the house, but they did not stay in the hall, but went straight to Kaya's bedroom. After entering, Kaya closed the door and looked at Ron with piercing eyes. Brother Ron, can you take Usopp away? Hearing this, Ron was dumbfounded. What does Kaya mean? Take Usopp away, is she trying to make Usopp leave? But Ron remembered that in the original book, Kaya and Usopp had a very good relationship. Even after Usopp became famous in the future, Kaya was still happy about it. What is going on? Why do you say that? It's his choice whether to take Usopp with him or not. Although we are pirates, we also go on adventures as pirates. We are not the same existence as Crow's guys. Confused, Ron asked directly. He didn't know the specific situation, let alone Kaya's thoughts. Hearing this, Kaya hesitated for a moment, and then said with some trepidation, Usopp and I have known each other since childhood, and I also consider him to be my friend. Usopp has always brought me a lot of joy, and I am very happy to have such a partner. But today, speaking of this, Kaya hesitated for a moment, and then said firmly, I feel like I don't know him, or even feel unfamiliar. His appearance makes me feel even more dangerous than Crow and others. Hearing this, Ron suddenly realized. Although Usopp takes action in the original book, there is absolutely no scene where he kills the killer. It is almost all done by Luffy and Zoro. Because of this, Kaya acted like this after seeing the real Usopp. After all, as the only daughter of the Chamber of Commerce, she was not willing to be with dangerous people, especially when Crow and others were exposed today, which made her understand that many people were here to peek at her family's wealth. I see. After coming back to his senses, Ron looked at Kaya and said, since I have said it so straightforwardly, there is no friendship between you and me. What can you give me if I take Usopp away? Although I agree with Kaya's choice, but Ron would not be stupid enough to be his tool. If you want to be a tool yourself, then you have to pay enough, like Bailey. However, Kaya doesn't play by the rules. He walked forward and stood up on tiptoes to place a kiss on Ron's lips. He said with piercing eyes, "Brother Ron, Kaya didn't lie to you. I have admired the strong since I was a child. I know you will go to sea and have adventures in more places. You may not even remember me in the future. But I like you. I don't want to miss you, even if it's just for one night. And I have medicine at home. I will take our children to grow up and inherit the family business." Well, hearing this, Ron was dumbfounded. He wanted to get some Bailey, otherwise it would be really troublesome for Zoro to buy a knife. But he never expected that Kaya would actually covet his body and even have a special drug that could hit him with one shot. This was simply. However, before Ron could react, Kaya took the initiative again. For a moment, Ron did not resist or reject. There was no reason not to eat the meat delivered to his door. A crazy night. Ron and Kaya woke up at noon the next day. After a simple wash, the two left the manor and met Luffy and his party who were coming. After a few simple conversations, the group, led by Kaya, came to the dock and saw the Namari. "Brother Ron, that's the Mary." Standing in the dock, Kaya pointed to the Mary in the distance and said, "Kaya is too weak to follow you to sea. I hope the Mary can accompany you." "Wow, so handsome. This is Malahau, tie pants are hot." Seeing this, Luffy jumped up happily. The Melee is already a medium to large ship, much stronger than the one they purchased before. With this ship, they will be able to continue their voyage. Good. Nodding, Ron glanced at Kaya. After pondering for a while, he then said, "There is something in the sea called devil fruit, which is also called the secret treasure of the sea. After eating it, it can enhance a person's physical fitness, and even give people special abilities, such as my lightning, Luffy's rubber, and the previously praised hypnosis. I will help you find a devil fruit to improve your physique. By then you will not only be able to sail freely in the East Blue, but you will even be able to protect yourself. After all, she is her own woman. Ron doesn't favor one over the other. Especially the medicine Kaya mentioned has a 100% hit rate, which should not be underestimated. If it does happen, it will not be good for the next generation if she is weak. Real? Is there such a magical thing?" Hearing this, Kaya's eyes lit up and she was a little excited. After all, if this thing really existed, it would be of great value to her, even. "That's right, Ron." At this time, Zoro on the side said quietly, "I picked this up. Look, is it devil fruit?" With that said, Zoro stepped forward from the side and took out a fruit covered with patterns from his arms. And the moment he saw him, Ron already knew what it was. Paramecia hypnosis fruit. As expected, after he killed Zango yesterday, the hypnosis fruit was reborn, and it was still on the island, and was even picked up by Zoro. This is really an unexpected surprise. With the corner of his mouth raised, Ron took the devil fruit and handed it to Kaya and said, "Eat it, this is Zango's devil fruit. It can improve your physique and give you the ability of hypnosis. Zoro, I've reserved those 2 knives for you, and I'll pay for them when the time comes." Chapter 30 Ron's Dream. Determined to become the king of the world. No problem. Hearing this, the corners of Zoro's mouth rose. He was eyeing the 2 famous knives Ron mentioned. The reason why he picked up the devil fruit when he saw it before was entirely because Ron mentioned it at the beginning. The worst thing about this thing is worth 100 million. He originally planned to replace Bailey when he ran out of money, but now that Ron has agreed to buy it for him, Zoro really doesn't care who the devil fruit belongs to. I see. At this time, Kaya also came to her senses and took a bite without hesitation. The next second, her face turned painful. The taste of devil fruit was so bad that it even made her want to vomit. "Eat it." Seeing this, Ron didn't know what was going on and immediately scolded, "If you don't eat it, the fruit power will not appear in your body. It's unpalatable, but it's not fatal." Hearing this, Kaya nodded. Without hesitation, he ate the pulp with difficulty. The next second, Kaya's body froze, and then her pale face turned rosy. Even the pain caused by last night's madness disappeared. So amazing. Feeling the power flowing out of her body, Kaya was full of surprise at this moment. "All right." In response, Ron showed no hesitation, waved his hand to Kaya and said, "Then we should go. Protect yourself well. When you have nothing to do, you can develop your own abilities. This fruit is worth a lot of money, and its ability is very powerful when it reaches a certain level, enough to allow you to deal with most pirate attacks." After saying that, Ron did not linger. After saying hello to Zoro, he walked directly towards the Mary. Nami and Luffy had already boarded the ship, and after Ron and the others boarded the ship immediately started moving. "Brother Ron, I will wait for you." Looking at Ron leaving gracefully, Kaya was not sad, but full of expectation and admiration. Then, she didn't linger, but turned around and walked towards the manor. With the blessing of this devil fruit, she has become stronger and has enough ability to protect herself. Even if there is any danger in the future, Kaya believes that she can withstand it, even. Kaya, however, on a hill in the distance, Usopp was looking at Kaya leaving in despair. He left the tavern in the middle of the night yesterday and even went to Kaya's residence, where he naturally saw some of the scenery. At this moment, Usopp was in agony, bursting into tears while clenching his fists. "Get stronger. I want to become a real strong man. I want Kaya to know that I, Usopp, am the strongest." After saying that, Usopp turned around and ran straight towards an area. Ron, you can do this. Honestly, what did you do last night? On the Mary, Nami set up the ship and came to the deck after setting up the ship. She looked at Ron and said with some amusement. She is not a god-tier person like Luffy and Zoro. She can't tell the difference between Kaya, but for some reason, she feels a little jealous inside. Want to know? Glancing at Nami, Ron shook his head and said, what a pity, it's too young. Hearing this, Nami immediately understood Ron's eyes. After subconsciously taking a look, she realized that she was indeed incomparable to Kaya. She turned around angrily and said, I'm still growing. After saying that, Nami walked towards the cab angrily, completely out of mood. ZZ, in response, Ron shook his head. He knew that this matter was a bit outrageous, but Ron, was not Lushawi, so he couldn't sit still. Correct. Suddenly, Ron seemed to think of something, looked around and said, Luffy, didn't Usopp agree to go to sea? No. After shaking his head, Luffy's originally happy face suddenly changed, and he became dejected and said, he said he wanted to go to sea by himself and didn't want to get on the ship. Luffy. However, just as Luffy finished speaking, a shout came from the distant shore. Looking through the sound, it was seen that Usopp had appeared, holding a package and yelling at Mary. Usopp. Seeing this, Luffy suddenly looked happy and quickly walked forward and shouted. Usopp, do you want to come with us? I want to get on the boat, take me out to sea with you. I, Usopp, want to become a real strong man. Hearing this, Usopp also shouted loudly. Different from his previous timidity, he looked extremely determined at this moment. Even knowing that Ron was on the ship, even knowing the situation between Ron and Kaya. But Usopp knows that he cannot become stronger by himself alone, and it is even impossible to conquer the sea. Only by following Luffy and his team can he truly become stronger and impress Kaya. As for Ron, to be honest, Usopp is not jealous, but wants to prove himself. He firmly believes that as long as he is stronger than Ron, Kaya will come back to him. Very good. After receiving Usopp's affirmative reply, Luffy immediately beamed with joy. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed Usopp on the shore indefinitely and dragged him directly into the Mary. Ron had a panoramic view of this scene, and he felt relieved inside. He really thought that Usopp would not get on the ship because of himself, but he did not expect that the situation was still similar to the original work. No matter what, Usopp finally chose to join the Straw Hat Pirates. My name is Usopp. My dream is to become the strongest sniper in the world. Please give me your advice. At this time, Usopp had already stood up. After looking at Luffy, Ron and Zoro, he stepped forward and said solemnly. But I know that I am not strong enough. I hope everyone can give me guidance. Cool. Hearing this, Luffy immediately shouted, the strongest sniper in the world. Usopp, I believe you will succeed. My name is Luffy, and I am the man who wants to become the Pirate King. Seeing this, Zoro also showed a smile, stepped forward and said, my name is Zoro, and I am determined to become the world's greatest swordsman. After saying that, the three of them all looked at Ron. Me? Sensing the gazes of the three people, Ron was confused for a moment. What is your dream? Fight for world hegemony, the leader of one party. Lord of the world? After a while, Ron came back to his senses, stood up from the ground and said, I, Ron, will become the king of the world and completely change this twisted world. Chapter 31 The reward order arrives, with the first reward of 28 million Baileys. A simple sentence, but it already explained Ron's determination at this moment. Although he traveled to the world of One Piece, he did not travel through the soul or wear it, but he actually lived in this world for so many years. Because of this, Ron is very aware of how twisted this world is. The pirates who are hated by countless people can actually make countless people rush to join him. This not only illustrates the ambition in people's minds, but also illustrates how chaotic and corrupt the laws and rules in this world are. If the world government and marine could really suppress all this evil, then no one would rush to sea to become pirates. Don't look at Roger's words that set off this era. But in the world, it is also because in this era, many people cannot survive in their hometowns, or even cannot survive, so they have to choose to go to sea. After going to sea, many people started burning, killing and looting out of evil intentions, which led to the distortion of the entire world and even the sorrow of the world. King of the world. What an awesome dream. On the contrary, Luffy, Zoro, Nami and Usopp looked at Ron in surprise. Although they didn't quite know what the so-called king of the world was, Ron's dream made them all admire him. Change this twisted world. This is not something that can be done casually, nor is it something that can be done casually. Alright. In response, Ron waved his hand, glanced at Luffy and others and said, since the matter has been taken care of, there is no need to waste time. It's time for me to continue practicing and become stronger. Although our strength has improved a lot this time, we are still extremely weak compared to those powerful guys. After saying that, Ron walked straight to the side area and started exercising. Yes, it's time for me to exercise too. Hearing this, Zoro also nodded. He is also very aware that his own strength is still too weak. Seeing this, Luffy and Usopp also joined in. It just so happened that Usopp wanted to become stronger, and Luffy also happened to give him some basic training tips. You pieces of wood. You will know how to practice day by day. Seeing this situation, Nami curled her lips helplessly. These 4 guys were all practicing lunatics, which made her feel a little bored. After all, these guys only practice and eat every day, and they don't feel reliable at all. But despite saying this, a smile emerged from the corner of Nami's mouth. Not for anything else, because she also enjoys this kind of peace. But just for a moment, Nami's face turned serious. She knew very well that before defeating the dragon pirates, such peace and tranquility did not belong to her. With a helpless sigh, Nami returned to the cabin. Time flies, and 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Look, Luffy, look, suddenly, a cry came. Looking around, Usopp could be seen hurriedly walking forward with a few bounties, looking a little envious and saying, "You are actually being rewarded, and it's so high." Bounty? Hearing this, Ron and others were stunned. Even Ron was a little surprised. After all, in the original work, the Straw Hat Pirates were first put a bounty on their head after defeating the Dragon Pirates. Why is there a bounty on my mind just after I went to sea? Really? What's my bounty? On the contrary, Luffy, who was extremely expectant at this moment, quickly stepped forward and asked. After all, as a pirate, if you don't even have a bounty, you are unqualified. Now that there is finally a bounty, Luffy is still very concerned about it. Your bounty is quite large. In response, Usopp grinned, then took out the reward order and said, "See for yourselves." With that said, he handed over the reward orders for Ron, Luffy and Zoro. Seeing this, Ron and the 3 of them also came forward to check. Open black lens bracket Straw Hat Boy close black lens bracket, bounty, 12 million Baileys. Close black lens bracket, he committed a heinous crime and participated in the destruction of the marine base of the Shieldstown branch, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket Roronoa Zoro close black lens bracket, bounty, 9 million Baileys. Close black lens bracket, he committed a heinous crime and participated in the destruction of the marine base of the Shieldstown branch, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket Ron close black lens bracket, bounty, 28 million Baileys. Close black lens bracket, the heinous crime was to massacre the Shieldstown branch marine base, close black lens bracket. What, I have a bounty of 12 million belly on my head. Looking at his reward order, Luffy was very satisfied at the moment. Tisk, only 9 million. Zoro curled his lips and spoke with a somewhat unhappy expression. Obviously, he is still extremely unwilling that his bounty does not exceed 10 million. But then, all their eyes were focused on Ron, 28 million Baileys. How so? Ron, I am the captain, you have surpassed me so much. Luffy's expression changed, and he said with an unhappy look. After all, as a captain, it stands to reason that his bounty should be the highest. But now? Ron's bounty was more than twice his, which devastated Luffy. It's really outrageous. How come there are so many? Zoro opened his mouth, feeling helpless and depressed. Based on the amount of Ron's bounty, it was more than 3 times his. It was really outrageous. Has it been found out? It seems Marine has some talent. On the contrary, Ron was not too surprised by his bounty. After all, he was the one who massacred Menka and the entire branch of Marine base, and only offered a reward of more than 20 million. To be honest, Marine was still a little conservative. However, Ron was a little thoughtful about Luffy's bounty order. Marine can find out his and Zoro's identity information, how could he not find out about Luffy? But even so, it is not in the name of Monkey D. Luffy, but in the name of Straw Hat Boy. It is conceivable that it is because of the existence of Garp, and even has the meaning of protection. But he has nothing to be jealous of. After all, having a background is also an ability. Hey, what are you doing? At this time, Nami stepped forward. Looking at Ron and others' silence, they looked a little curious. Nami, seeing the person coming, Usopp grinned, took out another reward order from his arms and said, "Reward order, this is yours. I didn't expect you to join the pirates so early and even destroy the marine branch base." What? Hearing this, Nami was dumbfounded. You know, she didn't join the Straw Hat Pirates back then. Although he also appeared in Shield's town, he left after taking the treasure. How could he be subject to a reward? For a moment, Nami's face turned pale, and he quickly stepped forward to take his reward order and check it. Open black lens bracket Little Thieving Cat Nami close black lens bracket, bounty, 3 million Baileys. He committed a heinous crime and participated in the sabotage operation of the Marine branch base in Shieldstown. Chapter 32 Teaching Moonwalk and Shaving, Saving Johnny Joseph. What? 3 million Baileys, I actually have such a huge bounty on my head. After reading the information, Nami was completely dumbfounded. He never expected that he would be put on a bounty, or even considered a member of the Straw Hat Pirates. You know, when they were in Shieldstown, the two parties were completely unknown to each other and had not even met. So why is this so? Why was he included in the Straw Hat Pirates when it clearly had nothing to do with him? There was even a reward of 3 million belly. You know, for her, it is self-evident what it means once a bounty is placed on her head. It means that she will become a pirate in the true sense, and there is no possibility of turning back. After all, not only Marine, but even the pirate hunters will be interested in his head. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? For a moment, Nami fell to the ground in despair, looking extremely weak, helpless and confused. Nami, isn't this a good thing? Yeah, there's a bounty of 3 million Baileys all at once, which is pretty good. Seeing this situation, Luffy, Zoro and Usopp on the side asked with puzzled faces. They didn't know what Nami was thinking. Even if Zoro had some inferences, Nami was indeed following them during this period and seemed to really want to stay on the ship, so he didn't suspect anything. No need to persuade. Seeing this, Ron smiled calmly. He glanced at Nami on the ground, and it was clear what his thoughts and purposes were. But now, Nami has no chance of regretting it. A lot of people in East Blue are willing to seize a head worth 3 million Baileys, including even the members of the Dragon Pirates. In this way, Nami is truly tied to the Straw Hat Pirates. Even though she hasn't really returned home yet, she has no choice other than the Straw Hat Pirates. After thinking about this, Ron's smile became even bigger and he said, it should be caused by the death of Menka and others. Although they are indeed extremely evil, it is impossible for Marine to expose his dark side to others. And we are the best scapegoats. We completely covered up this matter after eliminating Menka. It's impossible for the people of Shields Town to jump out and prove anything. After all, they have already taken those Baileys. It's a good thing that Marine doesn't pursue the case. So, under such circumstances, those of us who participated will naturally be offered a large reward, including Nami, the person who has stolen the treasure, has also been logged in by Marine, and the reward has been announced. I see. Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro suddenly realized. They really hadn't thought that this thing was like this. But at this moment, several people also understood why Nami was so lost. After all, the bounty placed on her this time can be said to be an unreasonable disaster. Even in the current situation, it directly caused Nami to lose any choice. Asshole. You bastards. At this time, Nami suddenly came to his senses, picked up his reward order, and ran towards the cab angrily. Obviously, her mentality has exploded at this moment. Alright. Seeing this, Ron waved his hand, took out the moonwalk and shaving skills from his arms and threw them to Luffy and Zoro aside, saying, what is recorded here is moonwalk, one of the Marine 6 styles, the shaving skills. You all should also study. Moonwalk can fly for a short time. Luffy, you are the demon fruit power. After learning it, you can ensure that you will not fall directly into the sea. Shaving is an accelerating skill. Once you learn it, Zoro, your own swordsmanship will be enhanced. Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro's eyes suddenly lit up. Moonwalk. Shave. This sounds really good, and they have experienced both techniques. Ron's moonwalk and Crow's shave are both very valuable. Good. I will practice now. Without any hesitation, Zoro and Luffy nodded. Immediately afterwards, the two of them took the secret book and walked to the side to watch. Me, what about me? Seeing this, Usopp opened his mouth, then pointed at himself and said, Ron, how do I practice? You? Hearing this, Ron glanced at Usopp and then said, whether it's moonwalking or shaving, it requires strong physical fitness and strength. You can't meet the standards now. Now, continue to practice your basic physique. When your physique becomes stronger, follow Luffy and Zoro to practice the moonwalk and shave of Marine 6 styles. Good. Nodding, Usopp smiled awkwardly. After all, the meaning of Ron's words was very clear, that is, he was too weak. There is absolutely no possibility of practicing moonwalk and shaving. Thinking of this, Usopp walked aside and continued to exercise. At this moment, Ron did not continue to exercise, but began to try shaving practice. After all, the value of shaving is good, and when combined with one's own abilities, the power exerted will be even greater. Speed Force. Lightning stimulates acupuncture points. Match it with shaving. The combination of these three will definitely make his speed reach an unprecedented level. By then, if you learn swordsmanship and become a swordsman, or even a great swordsman, then what opponent will not be a matter of swordsmanship. Under such circumstances, all members of the Straw Hat Pirates except Nami entered the state of training again. In the blink of an eye, another 5 days passed. On this day, Ron and others were practicing, and suddenly Usopp exclaimed, Luffy, come and look, someone has fallen into the water over there. Looks like he's drowning. Hearing this, Ron and others were stunned. After looking at each other, they all came to the deck area. Looking along the area pointed by Usopp, you can see 2 figures floating on the sea in the distance holding a wooden board. They're obviously unconscious and do not look very good. It's them. His pupils shrank. Zoro seemed to have thought of something, and said in a voiceless voice, Johnny, Joseph. Damn it, how could these 2 guys be so embarrassed? Zoro, do you know him? Hearing this, Luffy turned his head in confusion and asked. Yes. Nodding, Zoro said complicatedly. They're also pirate hunters, and they have been with me for a while before. Oh. Understanding the reason, Luffy did not hesitate, stretched out his hand and directly rescued Johnny and Joseph who were unconscious in the distance. It's them. Looks like we're going to the sea restaurant soon. Ron, on the other hand, was thoughtful at the moment. He glanced at the famous Sword Emperor Sword God, with a hint of expectation in his eyes. It's not because of guys like Sea Restaurant and Sanji, but because of the legendary world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye. Chapter 33 Luffy wants to hire a chef and successfully develops the Super Speed Force. It goes without saying how powerful Hawkeye is in the original novel. Although it is a Shichibukai, it is also the most special existence among Shichibukai. If Shichibukai has a rank, Crocodile and Gecko Moria belong to the lowest level, and their strength is about the Vice Admiral level. And because of their own defeat, both of them are extremely dependent on Devil Fruit, and they are weak existences even within the Vice Admiral level. The one on the previous step is the Empress, Jinbei. The strength of these two people is not weak, and they are at the Quasi-Admiral level. Moreover, they all have strong Haki level and physical training, and their own combat abilities are not comparable to those of Crocodile and Moria in the early stage. Then came Doflamingo and Tyrant Bear. These two are also at the Admiral level, but they have strengths and weaknesses. The average Admiral level can't do anything to them. Even the 3 Marine Admirals can't take advantage of them if they fight alone. The last and strongest one is Hawkeye, as the world's greatest swordsman. Before becoming a Shichibukai, Hawkeye was the most special Marine hunter. It is an existence independent of pirate hunters and bounty hunters. It is also the rarest but most dangerous existence in the world. He has reached the top of the world with his swordsmanship, and possesses 4 Emperor's level combat power. It can be said that Hawkeye is an existence that truly stands on top of the world. Now that we are about to meet him, how could Ron not be moved? Especially the situation of Zoro in the original work was witnessed by everyone. Before becoming a disciple of Hawkeye, Zoro couldn't even defeat a pacifist, and he was only a Rear Admiral level robot. But after becoming a disciple of Hawkeye, in just 2 years, Zoro was able to directly fight Marine Admiral. He even had the ability to cut Kaido directly after changing his sword on Onigashima. At that time, Zoro's strength had undoubtedly reached the level of general, even stronger than the average admiral level. And all of this is just the result of 2 years of random guidance from Hawkeye. Even if this is due to Zoro's own hard work and talent, there is no doubt that the guidance of the world's greatest swordsman is terrifying. Ron's current strength is not weak, and he is definitely a leader among his peers. Especially after developing the lightning fruit to a new stage, his strength far exceeded the boundaries of the lieutenant level. But Ron didn't think that was enough. He has bigger ambitions and bigger dreams. If you want to become the king of the world, you must at least have enough strength as a foundation, and what he lacks in strength now is Haki and swordsmanship. Haki can still be obtained in the future, but the guidance and teaching of swordsmanship are different. Eagle Eye is obviously a good choice and target. Brother Zoro, why are you on this pirate ship? By this time, Johnny and Joseph had woken up. After seeing that the person who saved them was a pirate, they immediately took action. After all, they were pirate hunters in East Blue, but after seeing Zoro, both of them stopped, more confused and puzzled. Johnny, Joseph, facing the inquiry, Zoro smiled indifferently at the moment and said without paying attention, I have joined the Straw Hat Pirates. I am also a pirate now, and there is a bounty of 9 million belly. What, brother Zoro, have you become a pirate? Hearing this, Johnny and Joseph were dumbfounded. I can't believe that the big brother I follow and even approve of has actually transformed from a pirate hunter to a pirate. This. But Ron didn't care about all this. He knew very well that Johnny and Joseph were both playing tricks. After confirming that nothing happened to the two of them, he continued to practice shaving, and at the same time tried to integrate the lightning fruit speed force and other methods. On the contrary, Luffy and others were extremely happy at the moment. After some conversation, Johnny and Joseph were directly involved. A group of people started eating and drinking directly on the deck to celebrate. By the way, Johnny, what happened to you? The misunderstanding was resolved, Zoro asked curiously. Our ship was shattered by the Sea Kings. Smiling awkwardly, Johnny and Joseph said helplessly. We originally planned to go to the restaurant on the sea. It is said that the food in the sea restaurant is delicious, and we also want to try it. I didn't expect that the ship was broken into pieces. If we hadn't met Brother Zoro and you guys, we would have died in the sea. Sea restaurant. Hearing this, Luffy's eyes suddenly lit up. Then, he seemed to think of something and said excitedly, that's great. Zoro, Usopp. Let's also go to a restaurant on the sea. Since there are beautiful things, there must be great chefs. I want to invite a chef to come on board and go on an adventure with us. What do you think? Good. No problem. Hearing this, Zoro and Usopp agreed without hesitation. God knows how they lived during this time. Although they had enough supplies, none of them, including Ron, had very good cooking skills. The only thing that was better was Ron's barbecue skills. But you can't eat barbecue every day. If a chef joins, it will be completely different. Then you can eat more good things, and the adventure will be meaningful. Good. Hearing this, Luffy also smiled. However, he did not make a decision directly. Instead, he came to where Ron was and said, Ron, I'm going to find a chef to come on board. What do you think? Everyone is a crew member. If Ron objects, Luffy will not force it. After all, in his opinion, the recognition and opinions of his peers are still very important. No problem. Nodding, Ron took a step forward, lightning pulsating all over his body, and his whole body was running in circles on the deck like a stream of light. As he ran faster and faster, Ron's voice came from all directions. We really need a chef, otherwise it would be really bad to eat the same thing every day. Wow, what's this? This scene immediately surprised Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, Johnny and Joseph. After standing up from the ground one by one, they quickly came to the area inside the field. Seeing the figure running faster and faster, even making it almost difficult for them to catch it with the naked eye, everyone's heart was filled with shock and surprise. So fast. My eyes can't keep up. More than that, I can't see him now. What kind of method is this? It's so fast, it's too powerful. For a while, there were constant exclamations. Luffy and the others were extremely curious, surprised and confused. About 3 minutes later, Ron's running speed stopped suddenly, and he suddenly appeared on the deck. He staggered a few steps and almost fell to the ground. His face was pale and he looked extremely embarrassed and weak. But at this moment, Ron didn't care about this. He laughed ecstatically with his eyes. Haha. Successful. My super speed force has been successfully developed. Even if it's only in its initial stages, the speed force can allow me to be 10 times faster than myself in a brief moment. Chapter 34 The Power of Super Speed Force Mode, The Stimulated Straw Hat Crew. Super Speed Force. Hearing this, Luffy and others looked at each other with confusion. Immediately afterwards, Luffy took the lead and asked, Ron, what is your super speed force? It looks awesome, faster than my second gear. As soon as these words came out, both Zoro and Usopp nodded. During this time, Luffy's physical fitness has gradually caught up. He has stabilized his strength at the level of a major, and because of this, he has been able to briefly turn on second gear without any major side effects. Of course, the setting of burning blood and burning lives still exists, but Luffy and others don't know it. Ron knows it, but he can't say it directly. After all, it was Nika. No, he did not eat the rubber fruit now. How could he know all this better than the original owner? But because of this, Zoro and others also know how powerful Luffy's speed is in the second gear. It can be said that when the second gear is turned on, Luffy's overall strength has increased several times. But even so, the speed of the second gear ultimate is meaningless in front of Ron's super speed force, and it is completely incomparable. This is a brand new model developed by me. With a calm smile, Ron looked at Luffy and said, this is very similar to your second gear. But I am not a rubber man. I cannot greatly strengthen myself through the acceleration of my blood. But I am a lightning person. Although I am not a Logia, I am more focused on physical growth. Under such circumstances, I stimulated the acupuncture points all over my body with lightning and combined it with the already existing speed force to develop this new super speed force. At this point, a trace of anticipation and excitement emerged in Ron's eyes, and he continued, and the super speed force will directly increase my speed by 20 times. As I get stronger, this increase will become more powerful. Even if I continue to develop it in depth, the increase effect will be improved. If it reaches ultimate, it can even reach the speed of light or even exceed the speed of light. At this moment, Ron was extremely excited. What lightning? What direct current, alternating current? In front of the super speed force, he is a younger brother and even can only be reduced to auxiliary ability. After all, there is another man in this world who can control the speed of light. The man who is terrifying with every bite, a supernova with every kick, and who claims to be well paid and fk'd up the 4 emperors is standing on top of the world. Even if he can't be said to be able to defeat the 4 emperors, with the sheer speed of the sparkling fruit, the 4 emperors can't do anything to him. Kizaru is a being who has reached the pinnacle in the true sense just by relying on the fruit's ability. And the super speed force he developed also has such potential. Even though the process will be difficult, it is not even as powerful as sparkling fruit in the early stage. But if they are really interpreted to the point of ultimate, then the gap between super light speed and light speed is still very big. Speed is power. This sentence is not empty talk. When the speed reaches a certain level, even a snap of the fingers is enough to cause devastating damage. Light speed. Super light speed. On the contrary, the faces of Luffy and others were full of doubts at this moment. I don't understand the terms Ron used at all. After scratching his head, Luffy said awkwardly, Ron, what is that? Is it very powerful? Certainly, after laughing, Ron was in a good mood now. Since getting the lightning fruit, he has quickly become stronger and mastered power. But he wasn't too sure about his future, even before he developed the super speed force, and he wanted to learn swordsmanship from Hawkeye. But with the birth of the super speed force and its true potential being revealed, Ron had completely abandoned all distracting thoughts at this moment. Kendo? There is absolutely no need to worry about that thing. As long as your own super speed power really reaches the speed of light, or even exceeds the speed of light, you can kill the opponent with one blow in just an instant. The only thing that might be missing is Hawkeye, and beyond that, the rest altogether lose their meaning. At this moment, he seemed to understand Kizaru somewhat. In the face of absolute speed, all the bells and whistles are meaningless. In this case, why is he still practicing hard? With Kizaru's own speed, coupled with the awakening of sparkling fruit, as well as elementalization in Hawkeye, he can even attack an existence of the same level instantly in the case of a sneak attack. Thinking of this, Ron immediately spoke. Have you heard of Marine Admiral Kizaru? It doesn't matter if you haven't heard of it. You just need to know that Marine Admiral is a strong man who stands at the top of the world. As for Kizaru, as a user with Logia's sparkling fruit ability, his speed has reached the speed of light. There are few people in the same realm who can be his opponent. This is because he is not serious and even plays with his strength. And my super speed force can also reach the speed of light, or even exceed the speed of light. When my strength is sufficient, the Marine Admiral will not be my opponent, even. At this point, Ron stopped talking, but Luffy and others already understood at this moment. Super speed force. The new lightning fruit mode Ron had just developed gave him the confidence to aspire to the top of the world. Although he is still very weak now, as long as he practices step by step and even develops this super speed force, in the future Ron will have the world's peak combat power. I'm going to practice. Johnny, Joseph, come with me. Almost instantly, Zoro stood up and walked straight towards the equipment not far away. The gap is too big. His dream is to become the world's greatest swordsman, but he still doesn't have much of an idea. But Ron has actually mastered the means to become a world-class strongman, which makes Zoro feel even more pressure and blow. I want to practice too. At this time, Luffy couldn't sit still anymore. He is stronger now, but he can't do anything to Ron in Speed Force mode. If he didn't work hard, if he was completely surpassed by Ron, would he still be willing to take risks with him? And as the captain, Luffy didn't want Ron to take more risks. He, as the captain, should be responsible for all this. Ron, you are awesome. Usopp smiled bitterly and gave Ron a thumbs up. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and said, you must treat Kaya well. By the way, Ron, can I have devil fruit too? At this moment, Usopp was desperate. He already knows about Ron's strong Yamato potential, but he is also extremely confused about his future, and even has the idea of eating devil fruit. Chapter 35 Sea Restaurant, meeting Sanji for the first time. Devil fruit? After being slightly stunned, Ron looked at Usopp in surprise. He really didn't expect that because of his own stimulation, Zoro and Luffy would curl up even more, and even Usopp would start to curl up. The previous hard training was to catch up with himself, but now he has obviously given up. He even asked him to treat Kaya well, which shows that he has given up on his childhood thoughts. But Usopp actually wanted to eat devil fruit, which was beyond Ron's expectation. But soon, Ron came back to his senses, took a deep look at Usopp and said, okay. But your best thing is your sniping skills. If you want to eat devil fruit, it's best to eat a fruit that increases your perception and eyesight. Besides, you haven't had much exercise since you were a child, which has caused your physical fitness to fall behind. So if you want to eat devil fruit, I only recommend you choose zone, and it's best to eat zone eagle fruit. In this way, it will not only improve your physical fitness and enhance your eyesight, but it will also allow you to master the ability to fly, so that you can snipe at high altitudes to ensure your own safety. Gouda. After listening to Ron's story, Usopp couldn't help but swallow his saliva. If nothing else, the picture Ron drew is so beautiful. He became a sniper partly because of his father, Usopp, but mostly because of timidity. Snipers generally attack from a distance, which is safer than fighting in the front. And now Ron said that the hawk-like devil fruit can not only fully enhance itself, improve eyesight and sniping skills, but can even master the power of flight to ensure its own safety, which is simply what he dreams of. Ron, I made a decision. Almost instantly, Usopp spoke. I must find the eagle zone devil fruit you mentioned. Hearing this, Ron smiled. It is undeniable that after eating devil fruit, Usopp may undergo huge changes from the original. But there is no doubt that such a change is very good, and even for Usopp, it is a promising future. Even in the later stages of New World, Usopp did awaken to the powerful ability to see and even foresee the future, but in essence he was still not as good as Luffy, Zoro and Sanji at that time. It can even be said that Franky, Chopper, and even Nami are stronger than Usopp in the later period. After all, Franky's mecha is the dream of countless men and is full of destructive power. Chopper, although he ate the fruit of everyone in the form of a commoner, there is no doubt that under his development, he has reached a quasi-admiral level, or even a general level. Nami. Her strength is not good, but she cannot withstand the blessing of the protagonist's luck. Zeus was made by the four emperors, and its own potential and destructive power are not comparable to that of ordinary people. Good. Nodding, Ron looked at Usopp and said, now that you have made up your mind, as partners we will help you. Just get the information that you need devil fruit, and we'll get it for you. Speaking of this, Ron's mind couldn't help but have information about the door fruit. That is one of the rare god-level fruits in the world of One Piece, and it is also very suitable for a wretched and developed character like Usopp. It's a pity that this thing was eaten and even wasted. They only developed some means of opening the door. It is really a waste snack. Good. Nodding heavily, Usopp didn't linger, turned around and walked aside to start exercising. Seeing this, Ron didn't stop him and walked directly to the kitchen area to start making food. 3 minutes of super speed force mode had almost drained him of all his physical strength, and now he urgently needed to replenish his physical strength. In the blink of an eye, a few more days passed. Ron, Luffy, Zoro, here we are, that's the restaurant on the sea. On this day, Ron and the others were practicing, and Usopp's excited voice came from the bow of the ship. When they arrived at the bow of the ship, they could see an extremely huge ship floating on the sea in the distance. There were many ships docked around it, and there was a big sign announcing the word, Sea Restaurant, on it. Finally reached, Sea Restaurant, I want to go eat delicious food. Seeing this scene, Luffy immediately cheered. After all, for nearly half a month, everyone has been eating barbecue every day, and they almost can't stand it anymore. Nami, speed up, speed up. Without hesitation, Luffy immediately shouted towards the cockpit area. Stop arguing, I understand. The next second, the roar of the lion from the east of the Nami River was heard. Although he was annoyed and even a little helpless, he was also more excited. Soon, the Mary arrived at the sea restaurant. After successfully docking, Ron and his group walked directly to the restaurant on the sea and walked towards it in a swaggering manner. Please give me food. As several people entered, a shout came quietly. Looking around, we could see Agent Jungwi shouting on the ground not far away. But it is a pity that no one will agree to his words, and no one will pay attention to anything. Even the chefs at the sea restaurants didn't care. After all, these two were pirates, even penniless. It was good to want food, but they had planned to kill everyone among them before, which offended everyone present. What's the situation? Looking at the indifferent people, Luffy, Zoro and others had puzzled faces. Luffy even wanted to go over and ask at this moment. After all, Ajin just wanted to eat and there didn't seem to be any problem. Okay, Luffy. Let's not worry about other people's affairs. Someone will give him food. Seeing this, Ron stopped Luffy. Joke. He did remember that Sanji would be delivering food soon. If Luffy stopped this, how would Sanji deliver the food, how would he be noticed, and how would he be able to leave? Alright. Hearing this, Luffy hesitated a little, but still chose to believe Ron. After all, as Ron said, Akanai in the distance is a pirate, and he is not sure whether he is a good guy or a bad guy. Now Luffy has seen the ugliness of the world. Whether it is Shield's town or Usopp's hometown, he has seen the evil side of pirates. In this way, the group quickly entered the restaurant. My beautiful lady, how can I help you? As several people took their seats, Sanji quickly came to the venue. A pair of eyes filled with love, looking straight at Nami, as if he had never seen a woman before. Chapter 36 Luffy invites Sanji, and the Krieg ship arrives. You guy, is it the waiter? Don't look around with those squinting eyes of yours. Looking at the sultry Sanji, Usopp on the side suddenly became a little annoyed. It's not that he has any thoughts about Nami, but that he considers her to be his partner. How could he sit idly by and ignore his partner being teased under such circumstances? Of course, all this is because Usopp is gradually getting stronger. It is precisely because of the training of Ron and others that Usopp's strength has increased, which has also led to a great change in his originally timid character. Otherwise, even if he really faced such a thing, he would not be able to rashly choose to stand up. What waiter? His movements froze, and Sanji, as if he had been insulted, turned his head and glared at Usopp. I, Sanji, am the most powerful gourmet. My cooking skills are among the best in the entire offshore restaurant, and I will become the head chef of this offshore restaurant in the future. Chef? Are you one of the best at cooking? Hearing this, Usopp didn't say anything yet, but Luffy on the side also showed strong interest. After all, he came here to recruit chef partners, and Sanji did seem a little frivolous, but there was no doubt that he had indeed aroused Luffy's interest. Subconsciously, Luffy said, Are you really good at cooking? Would you like to make something and let us try it? Although it is undeniable that the latter may be suspected of boasting, Luffy still wants to try it. Certainly, the corners of his mouth twitched, and Sanji felt a little embarrassed at the moment. Although he is indeed a chef, he is not someone who can cook casually. It's not that he is really that good, but that red-footed Tetsuo doesn't give him a chance to cook at all. How? No. Seeing this, Nami on the side smiled slightly and looked at Sanji playfully. Unlike Luffy and others, she could tell that something was wrong with Sanji. Although I don't know the specific situation, it seems that Sanji's boast of being a chef and being one of the best in cooking has some merit. Sure, beautiful lady. Faced with Nami's inquiry, Sanji agreed without hesitation. Although he felt a little difficult in his heart, how could Sanji be so embarrassed in front of a lady? Without hesitation, Sanji said directly, Then please wait a moment, I will prepare now. After saying that, Sanji turned around and left the place in a hurry. Seeing this, Ron shook his head. He knows how good Sanji is at cooking. As he said, it is definitely one of the best restaurants on the sea. But Sanji also has many problems, especially at the current stage. Red-footed Tetsuo will not give him any chance to interfere in the kitchen. According to the original work, red-footed Tetsuo is not only doing this because Sanji disobeys him, but also because he wants to train and even let Sanji go to sea. After all, the sea is where men belong. Sanji in the original book also wants to go to sea, but because of the existence of the sea restaurant and red-footed Tetsuo, he will stay here. And the reason why he finally went to sea was because of the conflict between Luffy, Zoro and others and the Krieg pirates. The main reason is that Luffy has great potential, and although Zoro was defeated at that time, he still survived the hands of the world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye. Because of this, red-footed Tetsuo recognized the Straw Hat Pirates and let Sanji go to sea together, because he could see that such partners are good and have great potential for future development. Thinking of this, Ron quickly asked the waiter on the side to order some food. He didn't wait for Sanji, after all, they were all big eaters. As the food arrived, Ron and others also started eating without paying much attention to Sanji's presence. Although Sanji promised to cook for them, in fact, there has been no movement so far. Instead, he made a bowl of fried rice and gave it to Ah-Jin outside. On the way, Luffy took a look out of curiosity, but Ron disagreed. He knew exactly what would happen. He had read the plot in the original novel. After Akin ate, he felt grateful to Sanji, but Sanji disagreed, but it also aroused Luffy's affection. Because of this incident, Luffy began to invite Sanji to join his team, but it was obviously impossible to complete it at the beginning and it was impossible to succeed. Hey, Sanji, would you like to think about it? Are you really not willing to join us? You are also a great chef, right? Come go to sea with us. It will be fun to have adventures around the world. While Ron was eating, Luffy and Sanji had returned. Different from before, Luffy has started to invite Sanji now. This scene made Zoro, Usopp and Nami twitch their mouths. After all, they didn't have a good impression of Sanji's initial appearance. Especially Nami. Regarding the latter's playboy attitude, I can say that I feel disgust from the bottom of my heart. Alright. We continue to eat ours. Seeing this, Ron clapped his hands, stopped Zoro and others from thinking and said, after eating, take a good rest for a few days. Looking at this, we won't be able to leave anytime soon. Hearing this, Zoro and others nodded. They also all know Luffy's character. If the latter is determined, he will never give up on recruiting people. Unless there is really no hope, Luffy will not give up on finding his partner even if there is a glimmer of hope. Under such circumstances, the group of people did not hesitate and simply ignored Luffy and Sanji who were just collecting treasures and continued eating and drinking. After eating and drinking, Ron and his party did not return to their ship, but stopped at the sea restaurant. Ron and others continued to practice, but Luffy not only went to Sanji to extend an invitation. As time went by, the day passed quickly. Early the next morning, a huge ship appeared on the sea level, speeding rapidly towards the sea restaurant. Not long after, the huge ship arrived at the sea restaurant. But as the haze dissipated, it could be seen that the huge ship was riddled with holes, and it even looked like it had suffered huge damage. What is that? How could there be such a huge pirate ship? It's incredible. What happened on the pirate ship? There are such traces. For a moment, all the guests in the restaurant on the sea looked at him sideways and couldn't help talking, their eyes full of doubts and confusion. Chapter 37 Luffy's Krieg. Ron invites Sanji At this moment, there was a sound of heavy footsteps. Following the sound, a man wearing golden armor and captain's clothing could be seen walking to the door area. Bang! The door was kicked open, and Krieg walked straight into the restaurant. Looking around, Krieg looked cold and violent as he said, "Bring the food to Lousy." It's Krieg. Oh my god, it's actually the great pirate Krieg. The Krieg pirates, I remembered. The ship outside is the main ship of the Krieg pirates. How is it possible? Haven't the Krieg pirates already entered the Grand Line? For a time, many people in the restaurant exclaimed. At this moment, they had already figured out the identity of the person coming, and because of this, they felt extremely shocked and frightened inside. Krieg, the former East Blue Admiral. It can be said that he was the pirate overlord before East Blue. But Krieg was not satisfied with dominating within the East Blue, and instead headed to the Grand Line. But now that he actually appears here, how can this prevent the people present from being afraid? Krieg, we're finally here. Seeing this, Ron smiled. The appearance of Krieg undoubtedly means that Hawkeye is coming soon. Although he had developed the super speed force, Ron still wanted to meet the world's greatest swordsman. The most important thing is that he wants to try his super speed force. In super speed force mode, his speed can be increased 30 times, and he really wants to know where his current limit is. Krieg, why are you back? At this time, red-footed Tetsuo came out of the kitchen. When he saw that the person coming was Krieg, his face became a little solemn. After all, as a pirate who went to the Grand Line in the past, red-footed Tetsuo may not be very strong, but he still has a good vision. Looking at Krieg's embarrassed appearance, I could vaguely guess that he might have come back almost as defeated as he was back then. Red-footed Tetsuo. Squinting his eyes, a trace of murderous intent flashed in Krieg's eyes. But at the moment, he couldn't care so much. After being chased by the monster for so long, he was really tired and hungry. Thinking of this, Krieg suddenly said, "Let your people take out the food, otherwise all of you will die." As soon as these words came out, many guests present were trembling. After all, the threat of Krieg is still very scary to them. Hey, why are you talking like this? However, before red-footed Tetsuo could speak, Luffy on the side was the first to speak dissatisfiedly. And kill everyone. Such words are not acceptable to Luffy in his prime. After all, after staying there for so long, he also knew that many of them were not pirates, but just ordinary guests. What are you? Krieg became angry when he heard that someone dared to contradict him. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes, and he looked at Luffy with murderous intent. However, before Krieg could finish speaking, a low roar came out. Go to hell, Krieg. Food poisoning cannonball. In an instant, a chef could be seen taking out the cannon, pulling the trigger without hesitation, and a cannonball struck Krieg. Bang! The next second, there was an explosion. Smoke curled around Krieg as he was hit by the shell. But before everyone could be happy, Krieg's angry voice came out, "You are looking for death." Immediately afterwards, you can see that the smoke dissipated, and the captain's clothes on Krieg were broken and disappeared. Instead, the golden armor protected him, and there was no injury at all. It was at this time that Krieg became angry. Without any hesitation, he directly chose to take action. Go to hell. Moving forward rapidly, his figure appeared in front of the chef in an instant, and he punched him away without hesitation. Krieg, seeing this situation, red-footed Jeffu and others all woke up from a dream. Immediately afterwards, everyone in the sea restaurant was furious. They picked up the pots and pans in their hands and planned to go up and fight with Krieg. Krieg, Sanji, in particular, was the first to lose patience at this moment. He rushed out and kicked Krieg. Unfortunately, the difference in strength is too big. Facing Sanji's attack, Krieg knocked him away with just one punch and hit him hard on the ground. Sanji, seeing this situation, red-footed Tetsuo and others couldn't bear to rush forward. But the reality is also cruel. They are not Krieg's enemies at all. In just a few minutes, red-footed Tetsuo and his group had all fallen to the ground. Haha, you losers dared to disobey me. After successfully suppressing red-footed Tetsuo and others, Krieg was laughing arrogantly. However, he did not kill him, but looked at red-footed Jeffu with disdain and said, "Go and prepare food for me. Lousy wants 100 people to take away. If you can't do it, you." Hey, you're going too far. However, before Krieg could finish speaking, Luffy took the lead and stepped forward. At this moment, his face was extremely ugly. He stared at Krieg and said, "Are you here to eat too? If you want to eat, wouldn't you just sit down and wait?" Hearing this, Krieg's expression darkened. Looking at Luffy, his eyes suddenly filled with murderous intent. "It's you little brat again." Thinking of Luffy's interruption just now, Krieg suddenly became dissatisfied, and without hesitation he hit Luffy. Well done. Seeing this situation, Luffy was not afraid and immediately rushed forward. However, Krieg's strength is still there, it is also at the school level, and it is still close to the level of a colonel in naval headquarters. In just a moment, Luffy was suppressed. Luffy. Seeing this situation, Zoro and Usopp immediately went to help. "Just leave it to me." However, before they could step forward, Luffy spoke first. Then, he took a sharp breath, touched the ground with his right hand, and said, "Second gear." In an instant, white steam surged out of Luffy's body. The next second, his figure disappeared and headed towards Krieg to attack. In an instant, both sides were at war. With the second gear turned on, Luffy had the upper hand, and Krieg was obviously beginning to be unable to resist. "Who are you?" Seeing that Luffy was already on par with Krieg at such a young age, Sanji on the side finally couldn't help his curiosity and asked. "We are pirates." Glancing at Sanji, Ron said calmly, "Although you are just chefs, you are also mainly pirate chefs. Without enough power, you simply cannot maintain normal operations. Just like Krieg today, if we didn't exist, how would you face him? Your name is Sanji, right? That's our Captain Luffy. Are you interested in venturing out to sea with us and becoming stronger? When your reputation spreads all over the world, no one will dare to cause trouble in sea restaurants, because you can protect them enough." Chapter 38 The Appearance of Hawkeye and Krieg's Surprise Attack. As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell silent. Sanji opened his mouth, not knowing how to respond to Ron's words. The chefs at the restaurant on the sea behind him were also silent at the moment. They opened their mouths several times to say something, but they swallowed all the words when they reached their lips. For no other reason than because Ron's words are the truth. If they had the protection of powerful pirates, then no one would dare to cause trouble in the sea restaurant. Of course, if their own strength is strong enough, they can cope with everything, but it is obvious that it is impossible for them to compete with an existence of Krieg's level now. "Ron, do you also like this perverted cook? He looks weak." At this time, Zoro asked with some confusion. Although Luffy has taken a fancy to Sanji, it is obvious that the previous recruitment was unsuccessful. Zoro didn't expect that Ron would actually invite him. "Asshole, what are you talking about, you green algae head?" Upon hearing this, Sanji immediately glared at Zoro. "Look down on me. This guy actually looks down on me. I am Sanji, the future chef of the sea restaurant." Cut. Zoro curled his lips, disapproving. After all, Sanji's first impression was really not good. "Okay." In response, Ron smiled calmly and said, "Zoro, don't underestimate a person's potential. He can feel that in addition to his cooking and kicking skills, Sanji also has a huge and powerful power hidden in his body. Once developed, he will definitely become a real strong man. This is no joke. Sanji, it can be said to be the most perfect work of the Vinsmoke family. His brother and sister were both failures. Although they had superhuman abilities, they also lost their humanity. But only Sanji has inherited all this, but it has not been developed yet. In the future, Sanji obtained the combat uniform of the Vinsmoke family, thus activating the blood factor in his body, and his strength suddenly reached a point where he was not inferior to the generals. Yeah? Hearing this, Zoro was a little surprised. I looked at Sanji carefully, but I really didn't see anything special about this guy. You, on the contrary, Sanji looked at Ron in shock at this moment. Does he know the origin of his identity, and he knows more clearly that he is a failed work of the Vinsmoke family. It can be said that his physique are indeed different from ordinary people, even. Rubber bazooka. At this moment, Luffy's low roar sounded. Looking through the sound, it can be seen that he punched Krieg's body with one punch. Click. The sound of shattering resounded, and the armor on Krieg immediately exploded. Immediately afterwards, his whole mouth spurted blood, and he was knocked out by Luffy. After crashing into the wall, he fell directly into the sea. 1. Seeing this, Nami and Usopp cheered. After all, Krieg had fiercely promised to kill all of them, and now that they were defeated by Luffy, they were considered safe. Really 1. This guy is so awesome, I didn't realize that this small body actually contains such powerful power. For a moment, the guests around him breathed a sigh of relief. They all looked at Luffy and started talking, their eyes filled with gratitude. Straw Hat. Suddenly, a pirate in the crowd stood up suddenly, pointed at Luffy and said, "He is the Straw Hat Boy, a big pirate with a bounty of 12 million Baileys." What? Pirates? Upon hearing this, all the guests who had spoken just now were stunned. Immediately afterwards, everyone returned to their respective seats in fear and did not dare to speak rashly. After all, this is a big pirate with a bounty of 12 million Baileys. There are very few people in the East Blue with bounties exceeding 10 million. Thank you very much. At this time, red-footed Tetsuo also led the people from the restaurant on the sea to come forward and saluted Luffy and others. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid Krieg would have wreaked havoc and killed people. Straw Hat Boy, if I remember correctly, you are the Straw Hat Pirates that just emerged in East Blue during this time, right? Yes. Nodding, Luffy grinned, looked at red-footed Tetsuo and the others and said, "My name is Luffy, and I am the man who wants to become the Pirate King." One Piece. Hearing this, the whole place fell silent again. Even red-footed Tetsuo didn't know how to answer. Coming. At this moment, Ron stood up quietly. Under his gaze, a small boat was moving rapidly on the sea in the distance. That small boat can ride the wind and waves, and the figure sitting on it is the world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye. Luffy, you guys are chatting, I'm going out. With that said, Ron had already arrived outside the restaurant. Bang! At this moment, a huge blue sword energy spread across the sea. In an instant, the huge pirate ship belonging to Krieg was cut into pieces and began to sink into the sea at a speed visible to the naked eye. What happened? What is that? For a moment, the restaurant shook again. Luffy and others who were among them also came out one after another. Go to hell, kid. At this moment, Krieg's figure climbed ashore. Taking one look at the destroyed ship, he knew that he was doomed. But thinking of his previous embarrassment, his heart was filled with murderous intent. There was no trouble looking for Luffy, he knew this guy was not simple. But when he saw Ron, he took action without hesitation, jumped up and attacked Ron. Obviously, even if he is about to die, Krieg still wants to pull a few backers. Court death. Seeing this situation, Ron's eyes flashed coldly. He was completely uninterested in Krieg, otherwise he wouldn't have been given a chance to talk nonsense before. But this guy actually launched an attack on himself, which was simply suicidal. Thinking of this, Ron stood still and did not move, but the dark blue arc on his body had already begun to climb. Careful. Get out of the way. However, at this moment, Sanji and others also looked frightened. They all knew how powerful Krieg was, and it wasn't good news that Ron hadn't dodged yet in the face of this sudden attack. Subconsciously, they opened their mouths to avoid Ron. But seeing that Ron was completely unmoved, Sanji couldn't help but look at Luffy and said, "What are you still standing there for? Isn't that your companion? You still haven't saved him?" As soon as these words came out, red-footed Tetsuo and others also looked at Luffy. After all, Luffy defeated Krieg before, and now only he has the possibility to rescue Ron. Unnecessary. In response, Luffy, Zoro, Usopp and Nami smiled confidently. Looking at Ron standing there and Krieg approaching quickly, he said, "Ron is not something a guy like Krieg can hurt. And Krieg is no match for Ron. Since he has taken action against Ron, it means that he is already dead." Chapter 39 Killing Krieg instantly, Zoro challenges Hawkeye. "You kid, die." At this time, Krieg had arrived in front of Ron. Although he saw the electric arc beating on his body, he didn't pay too much attention to it. After all, he was very confident in his own strength. Except for Luffy, he really didn't take it seriously. Floating giant trees are overestimating their own abilities. In response, Ron curled his lips in disapproval. Taking one step forward, his figure has appeared at the edge of the sea restaurant. Lightning flashed across, and Krieg's figure had landed on the ground. After staggering a few steps, the area on his chest turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Immediately afterwards, a flash of lightning bloomed, and Krieg's chest exploded. Before he could even say a word, he fell to the ground and died completely. Hiss, this scene made everyone present take a breath. Powerful, too strong. At this moment, everyone felt as if their hearts were being held by a hand, feeling a little suffocated. Especially red-footed Tetsuo and the others looked at Ron's back with shock and disbelief. Died. Krieg is dead. And he was easily killed by Ron in an instant. This was so shocking and shocking. Especially Sanji. The cigarette he was holding in his mouth fell directly to the ground. He looked at the back of Ron, who was about the same age as himself, in disbelief and murmured. How is that possible? It's so powerful. Kill instantly with one blow. What kind of strength is this? At this moment, Sanji's mentality completely exploded. Recall Ron's previous words and become a great pirate to shelter the sea restaurant. I thought it was just a talk before, and I didn't even take it to heart. But now after seeing the scene in front of him, Sanji completely believed it. Even a strong man like Krieg would be instantly killed by him with one blow. Doesn't that mean that no one in East Blue is his opponent? In this way, even just relying on his words would be enough to protect an area. Even under such circumstances, even Marine has to give some respect. After all, if something happens, the return of such a dangerous person to East Blue will be a fatal threat. Ron. He's Ron with a bounty of 28 million Baileys. At this time, the pirate who recognized Luffy before exclaimed again. He had also recognized Ron's presence. At the same time, he also recognized the existence of Zoro and Nami. After all, these people are all rising stars of East Blue some time ago. Except for Nami, the bounties for everyone else are ridiculously high. As soon as he debuted, he broke 10 million. Even though Zoro only had 9 million belly, he was already close to that level. Coupled with his identity as a pirate hunter, to be honest, his intimidating power is not inferior to that of a big pirate with a bounty of tens of millions. Ron. Pirate Ron. It's actually him. So, then these guys are members of the Straw Hat Pirates? Straw Hat Crew, our strongest rising star in East Blue at this stage? For a time, countless exclamations resounded. After being reminded by that person, after recognizing Luffy and Ron, they all already knew what the children in front of them meant. Even though they have just set out to sea, their bounty is already standing at the front of East Blue's pyramid, which represents their danger and even more, their strength. That's, at this time, Zoro in the crowd noticed the figure driving a boat in the distance. Looking at the figure sitting there and the supremely sharp knife stuck behind him, Zoro's body couldn't help but tremble slightly, and there was even an indescribable excitement and fighting spirit gushing out. You killed my prey. At this time, the ship on which Hawkeye was riding had arrived at the sea restaurant. After glancing at the dead Krieg not far away, his eagle-like eyes locked directly on Ron, with a hint of curiosity besides being dull. Although they were far apart before. But Hawkeye's eyesight is also extremely powerful, and he clearly saw Ron's instant kill, and his speed that was far beyond what should be expected for his level. Yeah? Then I'm really sorry, smiling calmly. Ron didn't care about Hawkeye's gaze at all. Instead, he said with full fighting spirit. But if you provoke my existence, you will have to pay a price. 7 warlords of the sea, Your Excellency Hawkeye, the world's greatest swordsman, would I be lucky enough to fight you? What? 7 warlords of the sea, the greatest swordsman in the world. Hearing this, the sea restaurant that was still boiling just now fell silent for an instant. Everyone then looked towards where Hawkeye's was, feeling the strong man's aura and his sharp eyes that seemed to see through everything. They all couldn't help but shudder. After all, almost everyone around the world knows what Hawkeye represents. 7 warlords of the sea. Those are pirates recognized by the world government, a third force independent of the world government and marine. Especially Hawkeye. As the world's greatest swordsman, he has a huge reputation and is the pinnacle pursued by countless swordsmen. It's him, it's indeed him. Zoro, Johnny, and Joseph were even more excited and blushed. As a swordsman, they recognized Hawkeye even more, and even had a strong fighting spirit in their hearts. 7 warlords of the sea. What is that? The world's greatest swordsman, Zoro, isn't that what you're pursuing? Under such circumstances, Luffy's naive voice quietly sounded. Obviously, not many people know the value of 7 warlords of the sea, at least for now, the Straw Hat Pirates don't know. Oh, hearing this, Hawkeye showed a hint of surprise. He moved his eyes away from Ron and looked directly at Zoro not far away. To become the world's greatest swordsman, the latter's goal is really exciting. Hawkeye. At this time, Zoro also noticed the eagle's gaze. After the whole person came back to his senses, he jumped to the area inside the field without hesitation. The next second, 3 knives were unsheathed. Zoro held Wado Yumanji in his mouth and held 2 swords in his hands. Let's fight. I want to see the distance between myself and the world. Hearing this, Hawkeye smiled. Although the latter is very weak, it can even be crushed by one of his fingers. But he enjoyed and recognized Zoro's attitude and spirit at the moment. Young swordsman. I agree to your request. With the corner of his mouth raised, Hawkeye slowly took off the knife hanging from his neck, pointed it at Zoro, and said slowly, "Sorry, I don't have a smaller knife anymore." What a joke. Hawkeye, get serious. This scene completely stimulated Zoro. He has worked hard for so many years, not only for himself, but also for the expectations of his young companions. He finally saw Hawkeye and even wanted to fight with him, but the latter actually used a child's fruit knife against him. This was simply too humiliating. Chapter 40. A swordsman who is not afraid of death, recognition and advice from Hawkeye. As he spoke, Zoro roared and attacked Hawkeye. Jung. Jung. In an instant, countless firelights splashed out, Zoro was like a beast out of a cage, waving the blade in his hand crazily, using all his strength in every blow, and every blow carried his expectations and determination for the world's greatest swordsman. But the cruelty of reality also made Zoro extremely desperate. He tried every means, but he couldn't make Hawkeye even take a step back. Every time he attacked, Hawkeye just waved the child's toy-like blade casually to block it. He even felt a strong shock, and the blood from the corner of his mouth slipped out unconsciously. Why? How can the world be so far apart? Why is the world so far apart? I do not believe. The more he hit, the more intense Zoro's roar became. The incompetent rage and the understatement of Hawkeye urging his will and determination to swordsmanship again and again. With each attack, Zoro's will began to melt rapidly. Weak. As for this scene, Eagle Eye had a panoramic view, and at this moment, he showed a disappointed look. The future of a swordsman is not only about potential, talent and hard work, but more importantly, will. If Zoro cannot stick to his will, he is weak in his eyes, and weak people are not worthy of surviving his sword. I won't admit defeat, however. At this moment Zoro's roar sounded again. Looking through the sound, it can be seen that his originally weak will reach its peak at this moment. I saw him holding the sword in both hands and constantly turning it, and he quickly moved towards Hawkeye, shouting, "I will definitely defeat you and become the world's greatest swordsman. 3 swordsmen style 3,000 worlds, interesting." Seeing this, Hawkeye smiled. Although Zoro is still weak at this moment, there is no doubt that he is not a weakling. Thinking of this, Hawkeye slowly raised the knife in his hand and said, "Then let you see the difference in the world." The next second, Hawkeye moved. He and Zoro's figures quietly switched places, maintaining the posture of stabbing out the knife. Click. Click. At this moment, the 2 knives in Zoro's hands shattered, and his whole aura collapsed instantly. He fell to his knees with his hands on the ground. Vivi trembled and said, "The gap in the world is really so big. Kuina, I lost." Eagle Eye saw this scene, but he didn't say anything, but turned to leave. He didn't even pay attention to Ron's presence. After all, Ron was not a swordsman. Hawkeye was not interested in weak people, and those who were not weak in swordsmanship. Wait, suddenly, Zoro's voice sounded again. He stood up slowly, turned around and looked at Hawkeye who was about to leave. He stepped forward and spread his arms. The sword marks on the back are a swordsman's shame. Come on, Hawkeye. Zoro. This scene directly changed the expressions of Luffy, Usopp, Nami and others in the distance. They all knew what Zoro's actions meant. He was begging for death. When he was defeated, he actually asked Hawkeye to kill him. Interesting swordsman. The corners of his mouth raised, Hawkeye was in a good mood at the moment. The haze of chasing Krieg for so long was gone. He turned to look at Zoro and said, "You are qualified to let me remember your name. Say your name out loud, swordsman." With that said, Hawkeye slowly pulled out the supreme sharp knife from his back. Ye. Roronoa Zoro. Not afraid, Zoro looked straight into the eagle eyes and said, "Very good. Roronoa Zoro, I remember you." Nodding, Hawkeye stopped talking nonsense and swung the knife in his hand suddenly. Peefed. Blood splattered and Zoro's figure fell backwards to the ground. Zoro. Seeing this situation, Luffy and others in the distance couldn't help but rushed forward. Hawkeye didn't care about this. After slowly putting away his supreme sword, he looked at Zoro on the ground and said, "Young swordsman, I am waiting for you at the top of the world. Work hard to reach the top. I look forward to meeting you again." At the same time, Luffy and others also arrived at Zoro's side. Including Sanji also followed. Seeing the wound on Zoro's chest, which was already in a dying state, they all hurriedly started to bandage it. It's really passionate, and Ron, who had a clear view of all this from beginning to end, couldn't help but sigh. Realistic viewing is far more exciting than anime. This defeat completely ignited Zoro's strong heart, made him understand the gap between himself and the world, and made his will of swordsmanship reach the ultimate. But Zoro's matter is over, but Ron doesn't intend to give up his plan. Hawkeye. Taking a step forward, the lightning on Ron's body was beating crazily, and he had entered the super speed mode. He said, "I also want to see the gap between myself and the world. Although I am not a swordsman, I am quite interested in swordsmanship. Let me experience the swordsmanship that truly belongs to the peak of the world, and see if there is any need for him to let me practice it." After saying that, Ron moved. Taking one step forward, his figure appeared in front of Hawkeye, and his fist hit his body directly. Nice speed, however, at this moment, Hawkeye was still extremely indifferent, his eyes always locked on Ron's body, not losing sight of him at all due to the influence of the speed force. Facing Ron's attack, Hawkeye picked up the knife in his hand again and swung it. Danger. Extremely dangerous. In just a moment, Ron felt creepy. That understatement of waving directly made him feel the crisis of death. The next second, Ron simply gave up the attack and dodged to the side. In an instant, he appeared in an area more than 10 meters away. But at this moment, Ron did not continue to take action, and even the lightning around him had dissipated. Lost. He lowered his head and glanced at the waist area. Although he avoided it, his clothes had also been torn. This was just a casual blow from Hawkeye, but it also made him feel how huge the gap between himself and the 4 Emperors class was. Nice speed. At this time, Hawkeye quietly said, "You are also a pretty strong person. Such speed, surpassing most people, reminds me of someone at naval headquarters. But you are too immature now. If you want to learn swordsmanship, then learn the most basic sword drawing skill. The invincible speed combined with the drawn sword is enough to give you a place. I will be waiting for your challenge at the top of the world." Chapter 41. Practicing the art of drawing swords and planning the 7-star sword. Batakujutsu. It's actually it. Watching the ship Hawkeye was riding on getting further and further away, Ron's breathing became more and more rapid. Nothing else, because the advice given by the latter is the most suitable existence. To know. In super speed force mode, his speed far exceeds the range of the same realm. If combined with the sword drawing technique, the power exerted will become even more powerful. Yamato is terrifying. The most important thing is that sword drawing is a kind of basic swordsmanship. For him now, cultivation will be extremely simple and easy. If the cultivation is really successful and the combination between the two is completed, then the power exerted will definitely be stronger. Zoro. Quick, treat Zoro. At this time, a burst of urgent shouting came. Looking through the sound, it can be seen that although Zoro's injury is stable, the wound on his chest cannot be underestimated. A steady stream of blood was still flowing out, which left Luffy and others helpless for a moment. Bring it on board. Treat him quickly. At this time, red-footed Tetsuo came forward, took a look at Zoro and said, "I have some special medicine, which should be able to help him stop bleeding quickly. But he needs a doctor to help him suture the wound and clean it, otherwise he will continue to bleed and even die directly." As soon as these words came out, they immediately attracted the attention of Luffy and others. Without any hesitation, a group of people took Zoro and ran towards the sea restaurant. Ron saw this scene, but he didn't worry about anything. He knew very well that Zoro would not die. Although Hawkeye's blow was very strong, it still left his life behind and did not affect Zoro's vitals. The most important thing is that Zoro has a special physique. Any serious injuries will be repaired after sleeping, and even his own strength will be improved to a certain extent. It can be said that this is like a low-end version of Saiyan, and such wounds alone are not enough to pose a threat to it. On the contrary, now, he is more concerned about his own future situation. Thinking of this, Ron immediately got a knife and went straight to Johnny and Joseph. Both of them are also swordsmen, but compared to Zoro, it is far behind. But as swordsmen, both of them are also capable of drawing swords. Very easily, Ron learned the core and application of the sword drawing technique from the two of them. Immediately afterwards, Ron stood at the seaside area and began to practice. Jung, drawing the sword again and again, Ron recalled in his mind Johnny and Joseph's tips and precautions on how to draw the sword. Under such circumstances, Ron drew the knife faster and more violently. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed, broken. With a low cry, Ron pointed at the area in front of him and drew his knife. The next second, the sword light was bright, and a dark blue electric arc could be seen drawn out, as if the sword energy fell on the sea. There was a loud bang, and the sea surface exploded. Although it was not broken or cut open, a huge puddle was formed, with lightning beating in it, and raging seawater also swimming rapidly in the nearby area. About there. Seeing this scene, the corners of Ron's mouth rose. 3 days. He has completely mastered the art of drawing swords. In addition, he also integrated his own lightning power into it. This also caused him to draw the sword extremely quickly, and its power doubled. Not only that, as the speed and frequency of drawing the sword increased, Ron could also clearly feel the sharpness of the sword drawing technique. Super Speed Force Mode on. With a low growl, Ron took a deep breath and entered the Super Speed Force Mode directly. The next second, his figure disappeared from the place. Immediately afterwards, Ron appeared on the deck more than 30 meters away. The moment his figure appeared, a sword light bloomed quietly. Draw your sword and kill. In an instant, the dark blue sword light slashed out, directly cutting the sea surface more than 10 meters in front of it. Although it did not go deep into the bottom of the sea, it was still 3 to 5 meters deep. But just after this blow, Ron also exited the Speed Force mode and stood there holding the knife, panting continuously. Hoo-hoo, while gasping for breath, the long knife in Ron's hand also quietly collapsed into pieces, leaving only the handle in his hand.
It consumes too much. When performing the sword drawing technique while using the super speed force, the physical energy consumed in that moment took away at least a quarter of my physical strength. His face was a little solemn, and a hint of horror flashed in Ron's eyes, but more importantly, he was also excited. Although he was in super speed force mode, his attempt to draw the sword consumed a lot of energy. But the power of that sword was extremely powerful, even a school-level expert could not withstand it. Even if it is a sneak attack, it can be killed with one blow. But now it is only the initial stage of the combination. As his own strength and physical strength increase, the power and speed of the super speed force combined with the sword drawing technique will be even stronger. Even beings of the same level may not be able to stop him from striking out. Okay. At this moment, Ron couldn't help laughing loudly. After all, under such circumstances, he has another trump card. Moreover, the cultivation of this killer weapon is not very difficult. It only requires continuous improvement of the super speed power and sword drawing techniques. Especially since he's not even a swordsman. Once you become a true swordsman, or even a great swordsman, with this attack, the power.
But it's too difficult to become a swordsman, or even a great swordsman. With my swordsmanship talent, this cannot be accomplished overnight. After a while, Ron calmed down, took a deep breath and said, I'm not Zoro, and I don't have that powerful talent for swordsmanship. And I mainly focus on my physical fitness and the ability of the lightning fruit, so I don't have much time to allocate to practicing swordsmanship.
So, I have to take shortcuts in the practice of swordsmanship. Even if the limit may not be high, it will allow me to become a swordsman or even a great swordsman as soon as possible. Speaking of this, information about a sword emerged in Ron's mind, the 7-star sword. In the original work, the Straw Hat Pirates encountered the legendary 7-star sword shortly after entering the Grand Line. This 7-star sword is an extremely dangerous existence. There are evil spirits in it, which can make people become stronger quickly and become a swordsman, or even a great swordsman. It's just a pity that the guy who got the 7-star sword in the original book was too weak. His strength as a swordsman was lost to Luffy and others, and the 7-star sword was also sealed. But what if I get the 7-star sword? If I get the 7-star sword and surrender the evil spirit inside it, then will it be? Closing parenthesis. Chapter 42. Nami left alone and headed to Kokoja village. Ron. At this moment, a burst of urgent shouting came from behind. Following the sound, we could see Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp coming in a hurry. In the area next to them, Sanji, Johnny and Joseph were also following closely behind, but at this moment their faces were all extremely ugly and serious.
What's the situation? With a raised brow, Ron's eyes showed a hint of astonishment. After all, apart from Zoro recuperating these days, it was mostly Luffy who persuaded Sanji to join. It can be said that the atmosphere of the entire Straw Hat Pirates is extremely happy. But now, looking at the people who looked like their dead parents, he couldn't help but be confused.
What happened? Out of curiosity, Ron dropped the hilt of the knife in his hand and stepped forward to ask. Nami is gone. At this time, Luffy said sadly, she left without saying goodbye and took the Mary with her. As soon as these words came out, Sanji and others didn't look very good. After all, Nami's behavior can be said to be a kind of betrayal for them. Nami leaved. Hearing this, Ron was also stunned for a moment. To be honest, he really didn't expect Nami to leave. After all, he had told Nami before that he and others would go to Kokoja to help her defeat the dragon pirates and even save their hometown. Unexpectedly, after spending so long together, Nami actually chose to leave and face the dragon alone. I see. After coming back to his senses, Ron looked at Luffy and the others and said, I know where Nami went. She was born in Kokoja village. Her hometown was occupied by the dragon pirates.
In order to protect the people in the village, Nami had to join the dragon pirates and became a little thief cat in order to earn 100 million belly. Buy back the future of Kokoja village from the hands of the dragon pirates. As Ron told it, Luffy and others were all stunned. They didn't know this, let alone that Nami actually shouldered such a mission. Similarly, after knowing that Nami stole treasure just to save people, and even protected a whole village at a young age, I felt extremely recognized and shocked in my heart.
It's actually the dragon pirates. That's a powerful pirate with a bounty of 20 million Baileys. Yes, I have heard that all the dragon pirates are mermaids, and their physiques are incomparable to us humans. Nami, a weak woman, wants to face it alone. That is a complete act of suicide. Quote. At this time, Johnny and Joseph spoke quietly. As pirate hunters, they all know something about the pirates in East Blue. Apart from Krieg, who was killed, the most important pirates were the buggy pirates and the dragon pirates. What? Isn't Miss Nami very dangerous? Sanji's expression changed and he said with a worried look. As soon as these words came out, Zoro and Usopp also frowned. After all, they all know that Nami does not have much strength. If they face the fish-man pirates with a bounty of 20 million Baileys, there is almost no possibility of winning, or even. Let's go. At this time, Luffy suddenly raised his head and said firmly, since Nami does such a thing because of her family, how can we, as companions, remain unmoved?
Go to Kokoja village, help Nami defeat the dragon pirates, and save her hometown. As soon as these words came out, they directly aroused the recognition of Zoro and others. But we have no ships. At this time, Ron spoke quietly. The Mary's speed is not slow, and it is not easy to catch up with Nami, or even go to Kokoja village.
Hearing this, Luffy and others also fell silent. As Ron said, they have certainly forgiven Nami and even want to help her. But without ships, there is no possibility of going to sea. How many? At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps. Following the sound, a man in his 50s could be seen striding towards him. After arriving at where Ron and the others were, the man laughed and said, I have a small lifeboat. If you don't mind, I can give it to you. Oh, hearing this, Ron and others looked at the man in surprise. I really didn't expect that the latter would actually send them a ship. Regarding this, the man was very indifferent, waved his hand and said, "To be honest with you, my merchant ship was robbed by the dragon pirates when it passed by Dragon Joy in the past. It can be said that I suffered heavy losses that time. I have heard what you just said. I am willing to send you a ship. I hope you can successfully defeat those guys."
Thank you very much. Hearing this, Ron smiled lightly. He knew what the businessman meant. The existence of the dragon pirates is a danger to any businessman, and even if they encounter losses, they will be extremely huge. Just by sending a small boat, if Ron and others can eliminate the dragon pirates, then the benefits to them as businessmen will be the greatest. Thinking of this, Ron said, "In that case, please leave us a navigation chart of Dragon Paradise.
With this thing, we can go directly without running around like headless flies." "No problem." Hearing this, the businessman laughed and agreed. Immediately afterwards, Ron and his group followed the businessman to an area where merchant ships were docked. After carrying some food, fresh water and fruits, Ron and his team set sail in the small boat and started heading towards Kokoja village. Johnny and Joseph are setting up the ship, while Ron, Luffy, Zoro, Usopp and Sanji are practicing and becoming stronger on the deck. Especially Zoro. After losing to Hawkeye before, only one of the three swords was left. At this moment, he was holding Hidao Yamanji and constantly practicing slashing. Zoro. Seeing this, Ron immediately stepped forward. After arriving at Zoro's side, he asked, "If your knife is broken, will it affect your own strength?" After all, Zoro is a three-sword swordsman. Now that there are two less knives, practicing is indeed a little different. "No." With a calm smile, Zoro glanced at Ron and said, "After the previous battle with Hawkeye, I found that my swordsmanship is still too weak.
And my mastery of swordsmanship is too superficial. In the next period of time, I will try my best to practice the one-sword style, then the two-sword style, and finally perfect the three-sword style. Only a solid foundation can make my swordsmanship stronger, instead of the crazy attacks like before that have no effect at all." Having said this, Zoro seemed to have thought of something and looked at Ron and said, "By the way, Ron, those two knives you mentioned before."
Chapter 43 asking about Kendo, Nami's despair. "Do not worry." Hearing this, Ron smiled lightly. Of course he knew what Zoro was referring to. Two knives were broken in the previous battle with Hawkeye, which was still very exciting to Zoro. Although it has now been decided to reorganize its own foundation, Zoro's talent will not be delayed for too long in the one-sword style. He still needs a new sword, and a famous sword. Thinking of this, Ron said, "After we deal with the matter in Kokoja, we will almost head to Logue Town. After all, although East Blue is not small, there are not many routes to the Grand Line. Logue Town is the final destination and a new starting point." "Good." Hearing this, a smile suddenly appeared on Zoro's face. As Ron said, they did not choose to go to the Grand Line directly before. In addition to lack of strength, they also lacked manpower. But things are different now. With the additions of Usopp, Nami and Sanji, their team has taken shape. As for the rest of the crew, they can be found after entering the Grand Line. The most important navigators and chefs are already there.
On the contrary, there are doctors and shipwrights. There are really no very powerful or famous people in East Blue. That's right, Zoro. Seeing that Zoro was about to continue practicing, Ron asked, "Tell me about the swordsmanship. Although I only practice the art of drawing swords, my level of swordsmanship has also increased greatly. I want to understand it." "Good." Hearing this, Zoro nodded thoughtfully. Although he was seriously injured that day, he still saw the battle between Ron and Hawkeye, and heard Hawkeye's words before leaving. In addition, Ron has been practicing the art of drawing swords during this period, and Zoro also knows that the latter will be interested in kendo sooner or later. Thinking of this, Zoro immediately said, "Swordsmanship is divided into swordsman, swordsman, and great swordsman. Of course I don't know much, just some information that my master told me back then. According to what the master said, a swordsman is a being with a sword heart who can determine his own path. A swordsman can cut through iron, and even a wooden stick can cut through steel. As for the great swordsman, my master told me that it is the existence of sword intention, sword power, and sword domain. But that thing is too far away for us. The master didn't explain it to me in detail back then. He just said that it requires one's own understanding. Sword heart, cutting iron, sword intention, sword power, sword domain." After listening to Zoro's story, Ron was thoughtful at the moment. If this is the case, then what he needs now is to understand his own sword heart. If you want to understand the heart of the sword, there is no doubt that you need to practice swordsmanship, such as basic swordsmanship and sword drawing. I understand. Thinking of this, Ron raised his head and said, "My path is different from yours. I will focus on drawing swords. So, I will temper my own special sword heart and continue to become stronger. Zoro, then you continue to practice and I won't disturb you." After saying that, Ron turned around and walked away. After arriving at the bow area, he took out a knife and started to contact the sword drawing technique. Seeing this situation, Zoro was thoughtful, but he didn't ask any questions and continued to practice his one-sword style. Under such circumstances, time flies by. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed.
Brother Zoro. Brother Zoro. Here we are. In the early morning of this day, Ron and others were awakened by the shouts of Johnny and Joseph. Without hesitation, a group of people quickly walked out of the cabin. Standing at the bow area, they could see a small island in the distance getting closer and closer. Even as it gets closer to the island, it can be seen that the Mary is docked in a remote bay at the moment. It's the Mary. Nami is indeed here. Seeing this scene, Luffy was overjoyed. After all, if it is confirmed that Nami is here, then as long as the dragon pirates are eliminated, they can continue their adventure. You guys take your time, I'll go first. Seeing this, Ron was thoughtful, and then jumped into the air.
Stepping on Moonwalk, the moment lightning twined and danced, his figure quickly flew towards the island. Ron, seeing this situation, Luffy and others were stunned. Immediately afterwards, Luffy shouted, "Don't just take care of those guys alone, I'm going to fight the fishmen too. Johnny, Joseph, speed up, hurry up and follow." For a time, the ships also accelerated their speed.
Although Luffy and others have also learned Moonwalk and Shave, they have not yet completed the training in a true sense. They cannot move forward across dozens of sea miles like Ron. On the other side, in Orange Island at this moment, Nami has just reached an agreement with the evil dragon, intending to exchange 100 million belly for the village. But when Nami returned to the village and was about to take out the belly he had prepared for trading, a group of people came towards him. Da da da. With the sound of footsteps, Captain Marine led his soldiers and walked straight towards them. Colonel Mouse. Seeing the person coming, Nami's expression changed. Not for anything else, because after what she had experienced before, she had begun to vaguely doubt the Marine in front of her. After all, what happened to Menka? Although Nami was not involved, she witnessed it all with her own eyes. Nami. With the corners of his mouth raised, Colonel Mouse looked at Nami, who was alone, and the greed in his eyes could not be concealed. Then, he said without hesitation, "Hand over all the treasures you took from the pirates. Those pirates' treasures were obtained by robbing civilians. They are not something you can control. Hand them over. The world government will keep them safe."
Hearing this, Nami didn't know what was going on. Colonel Mouse obviously came here for the 100 million Baileys she had collected. And only the evil dragon knows about this matter, but the evil dragon has just reached an agreement with itself, and Colonel Mouse has already brought people here. This also means that the two of them are obviously working together. It can even be said that just as Ron said before, she is completely being used.
For a moment, Nami was furious. He no longer had any fear or expectations in his heart. He stared at the Mouse Colonel and said, "Are you worthy of being called Marine? How can a guy like you have the dignity to become Colonel Marine? You have no intention of fighting the pirates, but you are extorting money from us people. Is this Marine? Is this justice for Marine?" At this moment, Nami's belief completely collapsed. Although she is a pirate now, she has never considered herself a pirate. Even because of her adoptive mother's relationship, she has always believed in justice and Marine. But this wave of operations by Colonel Mouse completely shattered the only hope in her heart, and even. Chapter 44 Evil Human Nature, Ron's points out. "Nami, give you another chance." At this time, Colonel Mouse's voice sounded quietly, "Hand over all the treasures you have buried. I remember it's about 100 million belly. As long as you hand it over, I'll let you go."
After all, you are a little thief cat with a reward of 3 million belly. Hearing this, Nami's body trembled. If it was just doubt before, now she was certain. Colonel Mouse and Arlong are really a team, otherwise it would be impossible to know the specific amount of treasure he owns. How do you know? However, before Nami could say anything, Jien beside him couldn't help it anymore and looked at Colonel Mouse in disbelief. Although he came with Colonel Mouse, he didn't think that the latter and Arlong were the same. Although they were a little sorry for Nami, they all knew that Bailey's number was already enough to reach 100 million, and they would be free soon. But now, Colonel Mouse actually knew it and even wanted to take away the 100 million Baileys. That is the hope of the whole village, that is the hope of everyone regaining their freedom. "Mr. Aegean, you." Nami also raised her head and looked at Jien in surprise. For no other reason than because Jien's reaction was wrong at the moment, and it even made Nami feel a little uneasy. Who knows? With a cold smile, Colonel Mouse glanced at Jien and Nami, who were stunned, waved his hand and said, "Go and dig out the treasure." Yes. Hearing this, Marine behind Colonel Mouse immediately rushed out with a smile. Then, under the unbelievable gaze of Nami and Jien, they found the place where Nami buried the treasure and started digging. Impossible. This is impossible. Staring at this scene blankly, Nami collapsed completely. If Jien's unusual reaction is suspicious, then the fact that these Marines directly found the location where she buried the treasure at this moment already shows one thing. That's where she buried the treasure, which was exposed a long time ago, and it may even be Mr. Aegean. Subconsciously, Nami looked at Jien and said, Why? Nami. Glancing at Nami a little guiltily, Jien lowered his head slightly and said, "We already knew this. We've known this for 8 years. This is the hope of all of us and the goal of all of us." Nami, I do not believe. However, before Jien could finish speaking, Nami couldn't help but roar. Why?
Why do you all know? If you all know, then why? At this point, Nami couldn't hold back at all, tears streaming down her face and she collapsed on the ground, her eyes filled with despair and collapse of the world. 8 years ago, Nami was only a few years old at that time. But she thought she could shoulder all this, so she chose to take the risk alone, not wanting anyone in the village to be implicated. But now she realized that this was not the case. Aegean and others knew about it 8 years ago. Even at that time, they already knew everything, but they never shared it with her, or even considered her existence in a real sense. Nami, listen to me. Seeing this situation, Aegean became a little anxious. He saw Nami's situation and immediately opened his mouth to explain. Pa bang bang. However, before Aegean could speak, there was a burst of applause.
Immediately afterwards, a careless voice sounded from not far away. Nami, you see, from the beginning to the end, you are not a family member or a companion in their eyes, but a tool for their use. The evil dragon used you to ask for 100 million Baileys. The mouse used you to take 100 million Baileys. Aegean, no, it should be said that everyone in Kokoja village used you to steal and rob for money with your weak body. They gathered Bailey to redeem himself.
Now that the cooperative relationship between the mouse and the dragon has been exposed, do you think they will reach an agreement with the dragon again after convincing you through the misfortune, allowing you to continue to serve them to obtain more Baileys, so that they can enjoy the sheltered life with peace of mind? The person coming is not someone else. Surprisingly, it was Ron who quickly arrived here using moonwalk. As a time traveler, Ron knows the plot of Kokoja village very well. Although the description in the original book is very good, the people in the village even united to fight the evil dragon in the end. But as a bystander, Ron also knew that this was not the case at all. Nami, he is just an adopted child and does not belong to Kokoja village. Although the person who adopted her was her ex-marine, they never considered her as family, including her so-called sister. It has even been described in the original work that Nami's sister Nokigao is full of resentment towards Nami's existence. All this was due to the death of his mother Belmere. Her mother, as a former marine, had always protected the existence of Kokoja village.
But the arrival of the evil dragon broke all this and killed it directly. Nokigao, who was originally like a little princess, completely fell into the mortal world. And the reason for all this is because Belmere adopted Nami. After all, when Noki was taller, Belmere was still a marine, enjoying Marine's protection, and even the dragon pirates did not dare to cause trouble.
But all this is gone, all because of the adoption of Nami. This also led to the fact that both Nokigao and the people of Kokoja village transferred all the sins to Nami, and did not have the courage to resent the dragon pirates who were the instigators. Because of this, young Nami encountered a conspiracy. She agreed to the conditions put forward by the evil dragon and wanted to earn 100 million belly in exchange for the safety of Kokoja village. The people in the village have known all this for a long time, but they have never spoken a word or said they would help Nami gather Bailey, because they all know that the dragon pirates will never let them go. But they still chose to hide it and let Nami go out to be a little thief cat. It is not that Nami really wants to earn 100 million belly in exchange for the safety of Kokoja village, but that Nami needs to exist and that he needs to be alive to provide enough value to the dragon pirates. Not surprisingly, Nami really stole a lot of treasures in a desperate situation, and the dragon pirates also recognized her value. Because of this, the people in the village had already reported everything to the evil dragon, including where the treasure was hidden. But now that all this has been exposed, Nami has obviously guessed the cooperation between the dragon pirates and Colonel Mouse, and may even give up everything in complete despair.
But how could Aegean allow such a thing to happen? The entire Kokoja village needs Nami alive, to continue to provide value, to continue to let them enjoy the protection of the dragon pirates, and even enjoy a life without danger. After all, Nami is just a tool. They're the chess pieces donated by Kokoja village.
Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day Family Feedback. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Grab a deposit now. Activity time, September 29th to October 6th. Chapter 45 Nami's Redemption, a mouse who feels good about himself. No, that's not the case. The calculation, scheming, and plan were completely exposed. At this moment, Jien was completely panicked and said anxiously, Nami, that's not the case. That's not what happened. Who are you and why are you talking nonsense? Quote. However, his panicked look could not be deceived not only by Nami, but also by the mouse colonel beside him. I see. At this moment, Colonel Mouse couldn't help but say, I didn't expect that you would have such a scheming mind. I felt strange before, why the evil dragon guy hasn't done anything to the people in your village, and he doesn't even take it seriously that you don't turn in many Baileys every year. It turns out all this is because of her. Nami, the little thief cat, earned 100 million belly in 8 years, and his annual income exceeds 10 million belly. How can it be compared to the 100,000 belly handed over by a small village like yours? That's it. I didn't expect that there is such a plan. It seems that the evil dragon needs to increase his efforts. One little thieving cat can bring such huge benefits. What if there are 10 or 100?
At this moment, Colonel Mouse was excited. If they can really breed more little thief cats to serve themselves and others, their income will be greatly increased, and even By this time, Nami had also come to her senses. Listening to Colonel Mouse's words, it was like sharp knives piercing into her heart.
At this moment, she realized how above-board and trustworthy Ron and others, whom she had known for only a few months, were. Although Ron's methods were more ruthless, he didn't have the intention to treat civilians as piglets, nor did he have the intention to take advantage of his own companions. In addition, Luffy and others are also like this. They have never wanted to take advantage of their own thoughts, and even if they encounter fatal danger, the latter will help, rescue, and even. Nami. Seeing this, Ron smiled. He knew his plan had worked. At this moment, Nami completely experienced the dangers of human nature, and truly saw the true face of the people in Kokoja village. In the original work, Nami did not see all this, but with her adventures and continuous growth, she has gradually understood all this. The most important thing was that the orange tree that represented her last hope for Kokoja village disappeared. It wasn't that it couldn't be planted, but because Nami had woken up and knew the reason for all this at that time. She was completely disappointed and completely cut off the connection between herself and Kokoja village. It's just that it's not shown in the original work, nor is it told directly. Only careful inspection can reveal all this.
But it's different now. Ron immediately broke all this down and completely made Nami understand what it all meant. Because of this, Nami will completely cut off all of this, and will not even continue to be plotted by these guys. She is disgusted and even moved. Thinking of this, Ron's lips raised and he said, "Ms. Navigator, are you willing to take me with you?"
I do. Hearing this, Nami couldn't help crying anymore. Ron at this moment was like light in her mind. Although she had never believed in the existence of light, at this moment Ron truly lit up her dark and depressed heart. No, Nami, you can't leave. Seeing this situation, Aegean was completely angry. Nami is leaving. This also means that she will be completely out of control. Without Nami's presence, how could the evil dragon let them go? It's you, it's all you. At this moment, Jien's inner malice surged out. Turning to look at where Ron was, he rushed to the side area and grabbed a marine's sword. He attacked Ron without hesitation and said with a ferocious expression, "It's all because of you. You are the one who was inciting discord between us and Nami. The relationship between them, I want you to die, I want you to die. Don't overestimate your own capabilities." Seeing this situation, Ron's eyes flashed with murderous intent.
Raising his hand, a bolt of lightning shot out and landed directly on Aegean. The screams resounded, and Aegean's body was instantly blackened, and his whole body became limp and twitching again. He didn't kill it directly. Ron knew Nami's mood very well. Even if this group of people plotted against her, Nami would not really want to kill these guys. Even if Jien and others were really to be killed, Nami would have to do it himself instead of killing them randomly. After doing all this, Ron looked at Colonel Mouse and said, "Colonel Marine Mouse. It's me." Hearing this, the mouse nodded. Although he was wary of Ron's methods, he didn't have much fear. After all, he is a marine and even a member of the world government. Unlike the others who are just a part of marine, the rat has a backend and is protected even within the world government. It is not an existence that can be dealt with by just anyone. Thinking of this, the mouse looked cold and said, "You must be the pirate Ron. I remember your bounty was 28 million belly. Now I give you two choices. Hand over 30 million belly and I will let you leave. Otherwise, I will capture both you and Nami." Hearing this, Ron smiled. Catch yourself. I really don't know what to say. As for handing over 30 million baileys, he is just a rat and is not worthy of it. However, Ron did not take action directly. Instead, he stepped forward and looked at the mouse and said, "As a Marine Colonel, you know Marine 6 styles, right? Do you have the training secrets of Marine 6 styles on you?" This is Ron's goal. Marine 6 styles. He has now learned to moonwalk and shave. But the rest of paper arts, gunpoint, iron body and tempest kick do not. The practicality of these four is not very great, but they can also exercise the whole body and are suitable for enhancing one's own physique and physical skills. The most important thing is that the secrets of Marine 6 styles include the 6 King Spear and the Return of Life. Both require complete Marine 6 styles training to understand. Ron doesn't care about the 6 King Spear, but the life returning skill is also a life-saving skill, so it can be said to be of great value. Oh, you also want Marine 6 styles. With a raised brow, the mouse took a deep look at Ron, and then said, "I can give it to you, 1 billion baileys. As long as you give me 1 billion baileys, I will give you the training secrets of Marine 6 styles. In addition, I can also clear your identity and let you become a Marine Major under my command. What do you think?" Ron's bounty goes beyond the dragon. From Mouse's point of view, if he can be brought under his command, his plan to conquer East Blue will be smoother and faster, and even. Chapter 46 Marine 6 Styles Manual, Self-Guided Nami. Good guy. What a scumbag. Even Marine 6 Styles dare to sell it. At this moment, Ron was also speechless. Even a guy with some brains would not dare to say such words, but Colonel Mouse said it, "Even if you buy it, I dare to sell it." But soon, Ron was relieved. It can be seen from the original work that Colonel Mouse has a lot of backing. Because of this, he can be so unscrupulous. You know, in the original work, it was after the matter of Mouse and others was exposed that the Straw Hat Pirates encountered a bounty, and even Luffy started with 30 million Baileys.
It can be seen that the people behind the rats are quite powerful, whether in the world government or within Marine. It is precisely because of this confidence that Mouse has the behavior and confidence to sell Marine 6 styles. 1 billion. It's really not expensive. Thinking of this, the corners of Ron's mouth rose. The next second, the electric arc jumped, and a knife was quietly placed on the Mouse's neck. Ron's voice sounded quietly, but I don't want to take it out, and I don't want to be someone's little brother. Colonel Mouse, what do you think of it? You. Feeling the blade on his neck, the Mouse's face turned completely ugly. He knew that the guy in front of him was playing a trick on him. He has no intention of buying Marine 6 styles at all, he is just trying to rob himself. Let Colonel Mouse go. Let Colonel Mouse go. Quote. At the same time, the Marines around them also came to their senses. I thought Ron and the Mouse were related, but I didn't expect that they would actually be enemies. For a moment, they didn't care about carrying the treasures hidden by Nami. They picked up their weapons one by one and stepped forward to surround Ron.
He raised his musket and locked it on Ron's body, ready to take action at any time. Colonel Mouse. It seems like your subordinates don't care about your safety. Seeing this, Ron smiled. Not paying attention to the threats of the muskets, the blade in his hand cut the Mouse's neck with a little force. Blood overflowed, and the power of lightning penetrated into the Mouse's body at this moment. The pain intensified, and the Mouse's entire face became distorted in an instant. Even at this moment, he could clearly feel that Ron really dared to kill him. For a moment, the Mouse didn't care about anything else and said quickly, "Stop. Stop it all. Are you guys trying to kill me? Get out of here, get out of here." As soon as these words came out, the Marines around looked at each other. Although they were worried about the safety of the mice, they also knew that they had no power to resist in the current situation. After looking at each other, they all put down their weapons and retreated, not daring to be hostile to Ron. But although they retreated, they were also watching secretly. Once the Mouse got out of trouble, they would definitely take action against Ron as soon as possible. Very good. Ron disagreed with this. He knew the thoughts of these Marines very well, but he had no intention of being afraid at all. After the Marines retreated, he looked at Mouse and said, "Colonel Mouse, could you lend me the training method of Marine 6 styles?" Of course. Feeling the killing intent on his neck, how dare Colonel Mouse say no? After all, he doesn't care about Marine 6 styles training method at all, and it has no comparison with his own life. Thinking of this, the Mouse trembled and said, "I will give it to you, but you must promise me to let me leave this place." Nodding. Ron didn't refuse this time. He didn't have any favorable impression of the Mouse in his heart, and he even had the intention of killing it. But under the current circumstances, the Mouse still has some role, and he still has some value. Good. The Mouse was overjoyed when he received Ron's reply. He quickly took out a yellowing booklet from his arms and handed it to Ron. This is the training method of Marine 6 styles. I give it to you and you keep your promise. Hearing this, Ron didn't answer. He reached for the book and flipped through it. Not surprisingly, what is recorded here is the complete Marine 6 styles training method, and even the 6 styles 6 King Spear and the life return training method. It can be said that with this booklet, there are no secrets to Ron about Marine 6 styles, and even the speed at which he will become stronger through practice will be greatly improved. Very good. With the corner of his mouth raised, Ron put away the knife in his hand, looked at Colonel Mouse and said, "Go away, Nami is my person, do you understand what I mean?" "I understand. Hearing this, Mouse breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. While he nodded and retreated, his heart was filled with murderous intent. Damn pirates. Damn it, Ron. You wait for me, you all wait for me. If I don't take revenge, how can I, the rat, have the dignity to hang around in East Blue? Of course, he didn't dare to express it at the moment. After all, he had personally experienced Ron's power. When they arrived at the Marines, the Mouse turned to look at Ron, waved his hand and said, "Let's go." Immediately afterwards, a group of Marines hurried towards the outside world while the mice were waiting. Ron. Seeing this, Nami stood up in confusion. She had calmed down now, walked up to Ron and said, "Why? Why let him go? That guy cooperated with the evil dragon. Not only did he harm Kokoja village, but many islands were also controlled by them. Even Nami." However, before Nami finished speaking, Ron spoke first. "In the situation just now, I can kill the Mouse easily, but the Marines around me are not decorations. I can ensure my own safety, but your safety cannot be guaranteed either. So, letting them leave is nothing. After all, compared with your safety, a mere mouse is nothing." Opening her mouth, tears welled up in Nami's eyes again. At this moment, she was moved. In her opinion, Ron's behavior was entirely because he cared about himself and protected himself. All right. In response, Ron smiled calmly. He put away the booklet containing Marine 6 styles, reached out and rubbed Nami's head and said, "Don't worry, they can't escape. Luffy and the others are already on their way and will arrive here soon." The rat is not an easy guy to talk to. This time he will definitely go to the Dragon Paradise to find the Dragon Pirates. After we gather together and catch them all, whether they are the Dragon Pirates or the rats and other marines, they will all have to pay the price for their actions. Having said this, Ron paused for a moment, glanced at Jien not far away, and said, compared to these, how are you going to deal with that guy, and those people in Kokoja village?
Chapter 47 Rat's Plan, surrounded by villagers. Hearing this, Nami opened her mouth and didn't know what to say for a while.
Although she has got the answer, Nami still doesn't know how to face Jien and other people from Kokoja village. As Ron said, she was indeed used, and even treated as an outcast by the people of Kokoja village. But she grew up here after all, and if she hadn't been adopted, she wouldn't be alive today. Under such circumstances, she really didn't know how to deal with this matter. And she knew that if she wanted to do anything to the people in Kokoja village, Ron would definitely not refuse. Even with his help, the people in the village would not be able to retaliate against her. Ron, forget it. After a while, Nami came back to her senses and sighed. No matter what, they have been kind to me. If it weren't for them, I might have died a long time ago. Hearing this, Ron nodded. Although the situation was uncomfortable, Nami did not directly go dark. Good. I won't attack them. He agreed without hesitation. Ron stepped forward and said, but these treasures are your hard-earned money. You can't give them to these guys.
With that said, Ron directly picked up the box full of treasures on the ground.
Then, he turned to look at Nami and said, Nami, are we together? Go to the beach and wait for Luffy and others to arrive. Good. Hearing this, Nami raised his head, with a smile on his tear-stained face. Immediately afterwards, the two turned around and walked towards the outside world. Colonel Mouse, on the other side, Marine and his group escaped from the Kokoja village. After confirming that Ron had not chased him out, a Marine came forward and said with a reluctant expression, Is this the matter? Are we going back like this? As soon as these words came out, all the Marines around showed unwillingness and resentment. For no other reason than for so many years, they have followed the mice to dominate. When have they ever suffered such a big loss? Especially the 100 million Baileys. That was a real treasure. It was right in front of them just now, but now it has nothing to do with them. Of course not. With a cold smile, Colonel Mouse also had a hint of coldness on his face at this moment. He turned to look in the direction of the village and said, Go find the evil dragon. The guy named Ron is indeed very strong, but as long as those guys from the Dragon Pirates take action, both sides will definitely suffer. At that time, I will catch them all, not just Ron, Nami, including the Dragon Pirates, and even the people in Kokoja village must die for me. If you dare to make Colonel Ben such a fool of yourself, these guys will all die, and their treasures will also belong to me, even. At this point, the mouse's eyes suddenly became hot, and he clenched his fists and said, As long as I take down the heads of the Dragon Pirates and Ron, it will be a huge achievement. Then I won't need to stay in this small place, East Blue. I can even go to the Grand Line and become a base captain. As soon as these words came out, all the Marines present were short of breath. For nothing else, if it is true as the mouse said. When the time comes for Mouse to get a promotion and a salary increase, won't he and others also have to be promoted as well?
The most important thing is that as long as all these guys are killed, the treasure obtained by then will be more than 100 million Baileys. Colonel Mouse is mighty. Colonel Mouse is mighty. Quote. For a moment, all the Marines in the stadium were shouting, their eyes filled with enthusiasm and anticipation. All right. Waving his hands, Colonel Mouse calmed down his emotions, then turned around and said, Follow me, go to the Dragon Paradise as soon as possible, and let him kill the untouchables in this village first. Yes. Immediately afterwards, a group of Marines followed Colonel Mouse and hurried towards the Dragon Paradise in the distance. Nami, what are you doing? Nami, where are you going? Quote. On the other side, Ron and Nami, who were about to leave, were also surrounded. As they went out, the villagers in Kokoja village also noticed their presence. Everyone looked expectantly at the treasure box being carried by Ron, their eyes full of excitement and anticipation. After all, in their opinion, as long as Nami and Bailey gather together, they will be able to get rid of the control of the Dragon Pirates. By then.
Ron, let's go. But at this moment, Nami didn't say hello to the villagers around him. Ron had already analyzed the reason before, and Nami also knew that the villagers in front of him had no good intentions towards him at all, and some were just hypocritical and treated him as an outcast. This scene directly made the surrounding villagers frown slightly. But they didn't take too many actions. After all, in their opinion, Nami was probably looking for the dragon to make a deal.
Stop them. Don't let them get away. Suddenly, a burst of urgent shouting sounded. Following the sound, a figure could be seen running towards her in a hurry. She looked anxious and said angrily, Nami wants to take away the treasure. She wants to leave Kokoja village. She has no intention of trading with the evil dragon. She also injured Aegean. Now that Mr. Aegean is dying, they must not be allowed to leave this place. As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell silent. All the villagers opened their mouths with disbelief on their faces. After all, Nami has been manipulated by them and kidnapped morally for so many years. But now, it was obvious that Bailey had gathered together, but Nami actually chose to leave, and even took Bailey away with him, not caring about their life or death at all. This. Nogigo. However, Nami's voice was also filled with pain at this moment. He stared at the figure not far away, feeling as if he had been stabbed in his heart. Although I already knew that the villagers were lying to me. But she subconsciously excluded Nokigao, after all, she was her sister.
But now? Nokigao actually stood up and even tried to stop her from leaving, for the treasure that she had worked so hard for so many years. In an instant, Nami's mentality completely exploded, and tears burst out again, but her whole body was like a furious lioness, glaring at Nuoki and saying, "Why? Why would you be like them? You are my sister, and I am your sister. Why are you doing this to me?" Ron had a panoramic view of this scene. Although this happened due to his own fault, Ron didn't feel too much self-blame.
Even if there is, that was also an apology to Nami, not the villagers around her. Because of the situation at this moment, he could clearly see that the villagers around him were ready to move, and one by one they were holding sticks and began to approach the area where they were. Obviously, when these villagers knew that Nami was leaving and even taking her 8 years to earn Bailey, the evil side in their hearts completely exploded. Chapter 48 The completely blackened Nami, the destruction of Kokoja village. Nami. A hint of complexity flashed in his eyes, and a hint of guilt appeared on Nokigao's face. But soon, the look on her face was replaced by hatred, and she glared at Nami and said, "If it weren't for you, Mom wouldn't have died. Nami, it's all because of you that this tragedy happened. My mother died because of you, and the village is like this because of you. You deserve to die. You deserve death. All you have done over the years is just atonement. Leave the treasure and you can leave, otherwise we will not allow you to leave."
As soon as these words came out, the surrounding villagers also became energetic. As if they had gained confidence, they all said, "Yes, Nami, you are a bad guy. If it hadn't been for you that caused Belmere to leave Marine, we would have been protected by Marine, and we couldn't be enslaved by the dragon pirates. Yes, it's because of you. All this happened because of you. You're such a bastard, it's you who brought disaster to our village.
All you have done is to atone for your sins. That Bailey does not belong to you." Quote. Listening to the villagers' condemnation, the killing intent in Ron's eyes gradually began to rise. Although he had known about the humanity of these guys in Kokoja village for a long time, when these guys really kidnapped their morals, even as a bystander, he could not suppress the murderous intention in his heart. You guys. Nami was also stunned. Standing there blankly, listening to the accusations from the villagers around him, he completely collapsed. She wasn't shouting, ranting, or even crying. A pair of eyes glanced around, as if he was getting to know Nokigao and the villagers again. "Ron." After a moment, Nami suddenly raised his head and said, "Put the treasure down and let's go. I don't care anymore." Good. Hearing this, Ron pondered for a moment, then casually threw the treasure box containing Bailey not far away in front of Nokigao, and said in a cold voice, "One last question for you, 100 million Bailey or Nami, who do you choose?" Of course Pele. Without any hesitation, Noki stepped forward and opened the treasure chest without even looking at Ron and Nami. Seeing the piles of Baileys among them, she said with a smile on her face, "That's great. 100 million Bailey. With these 100 million Baileys, we can get rid of the control of the dragon pirates, and everyone can live in peace and freedom again."
As soon as these words came out, the surrounding villagers also cheered. No one paid attention to the existence of Ron and Nami. They were swarming towards the treasure chest area at this moment, with smiles, excitement and expectations for the future on their faces. "It is your own fault. You shall not live." Taking in all this scene, Ron's corners of his mouth rose, with a trace of ridicule and disdain in his eyes. Then, he looked to the side and said, "Nami, let's go."
Good. Nodding, Nami didn't linger, turned around and followed Ron towards the outside world. Not long after, Ron and Nami arrived at the beach in the bay where the Mary was located. The two of them were not having a conversation, but were sitting there looking at the sea in the distance without saying a word. As time passed, the figure of a ship on the sea was approaching rapidly. As the sun set, the boat on which Luffy and others arrived at the harbor. Ron, Nami. Quote. Seeing Ron and Nami, Luffy and others hurried over after getting off the boat. Soon, the group successfully reunited. But at this moment, Luffy and others also saw that something was wrong with Nami. After looking at each other, they all came to Ron's side and asked, "Ron, what's going on? Why does Nami look so unhappy? Ron, what happened? Why Nami?" Hearing this, Ron shook his head and told the story without hesitation. Hateful. How abominable. Those guys are damn good.
After listening to Ron's story, Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, Sanji, Johnny and Joseph were all angry. Even Luffy's face became ugly. After all, this kind of thing is extremely difficult for them to accept. A villager plotted against an 8-year-old girl and used Nami as a tool. Now they actually put all the blame on her. They even morally kidnapped Nami and took away the savings she had worked hard to earn over the past 8 years. This is.
I'll kill them. Almost instantly, Johnny and Joseph spoke quietly. The two are pirate hunters. Although they are not evil-hearted, it does not mean that they dare not kill people. Now the behavior of the people in Kokoja village can be said to have completely angered them. Even if they did not join the Straw Hat Pirates, they were extremely sympathetic and angry about Nami's experience. Together we will. Sanji lit a cigarette, his expression now also cold.
Luffy and Zoro didn't say anything, but they had already turned around and were heading to Kokoja village. Okay, everyone, seeing this, Ron clapped his hands and said, "Don't worry, they will pay the price for their actions." Finally reunited, let's have dinner first. As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others were stunned. He subconsciously looked at Ron, completely confused as to why he was so calm and even said such words. Everyone, I'm hungry. At this time, Nami also raised his head and looked at Luffy, who was going to stand up for him. Everyone was moved. A wry smile appeared on his face and said, "I want to eat, I want to celebrate, please everyone." As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others fell silent. They didn't know what riddle Ron and Nami were playing. But looking at the solemn Nami, Luffy did not refuse. He turned his head and said, "Sanji, I leave it to you." Good. With a slight smile, Sanji turned towards the boat and said, "Since it is Miss Nami's request, how can I refuse as a gentleman? Next, let me conquer you with delicious food. Sanji, let's help you." "Sanji, let's help too." Seeing this situation, Johnny, Joseph, and Usopp also stepped forward. Soon, Sanji began to cook many delicacies. Under such circumstances, Ron and others gathered in the area at the top of the cliff to eat and drink together. Bang, bang. Suddenly, a roar echoed in the distant area. As a flame shot into the sky, you could clearly see a fire burning in the direction of Kokoja village. Immediately afterwards, countless wailing sounds came from it. Do not kill me, evil dragon, you are not trustworthy. Why do you do this to us? We have already given you 100 million belly, why do you want to go back on your word? Chapter 49 Killing the Fishman, the Dragon Pirates Attack. Seeing the movement in the distance, Luffy and others who were eating and drinking were all stunned. Immediately afterwards, they all stood up and said, "No, the village was destroyed, However, when talking about this, Luffy and others also fell silent. For no other reason, because at this moment Ron and Nami were still sitting there indifferently, looking at the flames of Kokoja village in the distance, showing no intention of being moved by it. Obviously, this was all part of Ron's plan. He let the mouse go. Because he knew very well that the latter's temper was retributive. After leaving, the mouse will definitely find the dragon pirates and even ask the dragon pirates to take action against Kokoja village. The facts are as expected. Kokoja village was attacked that night alone. According to this trend, the entire village will soon be completely destroyed by the ravages of the dragon pirates, by then. Ron. At this time, Luffy seemed to think of something and said, "Did you do this? What does it have to do with me?" With a calm smile, Ron stood up slowly and said, "Those guys in Kokoja village are asking for it. After all, I can give them a chance. Nami and 100 million Baileys, they chose 100 million Baileys without hesitation." As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others fell silent. Ron had told this story before, and they were all extremely angry about it. Even the villagers in Kokoja village were extremely angry. After all, they took advantage of Nami, or even played with Nami. But under the current circumstances, the development of this matter is somewhat unexpected. With such a large-scale invasion, I am afraid that the villagers of Kokoja village will encounter unexpected events, and even Nami. However, at this moment, a voice came. Following the sound, we could see Nu Okagao and several villagers running in confusion from a distance. After seeing Ron and others, their eyes were filled with intense joy, as if they were in dire straits, and they all said, "Help me. Save us quickly. Those guys from the dragon pirates are crazy, they're killing the villagers crazily. Nami, please bring your companions to help, otherwise everyone will die." As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others frowned. There is no doubt that Nu Okagao and others are still kidnapping them morally at this moment. Although Luffy and others do want to help, this matter is about Nami. Especially the unfair treatment that Nami encountered before made them extremely angry and did not have any good impression of the people of Kokoja village. Ignore them. At this time, Nami spoke quietly. She was still eating, and although she looked a little sad, her face was also extremely determined. As Ron said, the moment Nokagao chose 100 million belly, her heart had completely died. Not to mention that the love for the people of Kokoja village has turned into hatred, at least it has been exhausted. Where to go? Die. At this time, the accident happened again. It can be seen that in the area behind Noki and others, the fishmen of the dragon pirates have already caught up. Without any hesitation, they launched attacks one after another. In an instant, one villager after another died tragically in the hands of those fishmen. Including Nu Okagao, a knife was pierced through the heart without hesitation at this moment. Nami. At this point, the happy look on Nokigao's face disappeared, replaced by endless resentment. He glared at Nami, who was eating in the distance, gritted his teeth and said, "You are such a stubborn guy, I will never let you go even if I am a ghost, of." However, her words did not cause any waves in Nami. Even at this moment, Nami just gave Nokagao a flat look, then stood up and said, "Don't worry, I will avenge you. This is also the last thing I can do for Kokoja village." After saying that, Nami looked at Ron and others, bowed and said, "Please, everyone. I know it's dangerous, and I know the dragon pirates are powerful. But I hope everyone can help me eliminate them and prevent tragedies like Kokoja village from happening again." "Good. No problem." Hearing this, Luffy and others nodded. They couldn't wait for a long time, but they didn't take action because of Nami's choice. Now that Nami has made her choice, why are they hesitating? Go together. Kill those fishmen. Almost instantly, Luffy was the first to drink. Immediately afterwards, his figure sprang out, waving his arms and attacking the crowd of fish. Rubber rubber machine gun, rubber rubber pistol. As Luffy took action, Zoro and Sanji followed closely behind. The light of the knife flashed, and Zoro slashed a famous fishman to the ground with his knife. Sanji was also very proficient in kicking skills. When he was walking among the crowd of fishmen, a famous fishman was kicked to the ground and could not move. "Brother Zoro, let's help you, Brother Zoro, we're here." Johnny and Joseph did not hesitate at this moment, they drew their swords and rushed forward. With their cooperation, Zoro's attacks became more vicious and sharp, and he didn't even need to worry about anyone approaching. Because of Johnny and Joseph's protection, those fishmen couldn't get close to Zoro. Go, middle. At the same time, Usopp also took out his own special slingshot. Special bullets flew out one after another and landed directly on the bodies of the fishmen, limiting their ability to attack and escape. In a short period of time, more than a dozen of the fishmen of the evil dragon pirate group who were chasing after them had been killed, and the situation was even completely one-sided. Good guy. It seems that the involution training during this period is still effective. Seeing this, the corners of Ron's mouth rose. You know, although Zoro and others in the original book were able to defeat the fishmen, they could not do it so easily. But it's different now. Because of Ron's joining, the members of the Straw Hat Pirates became more involved and focused on their own training. This also makes them much stronger than in the original work, especially Luffy. With the second gear developed in advance, there are really not many East Blue players who can rival him. Damn it. What the hell did you humans do? At this moment, an angry low roar sounded. Immediately afterwards, a violent breath came. Following the sound, it can be seen that the evil dragon is leading the members of the evil dragon pirates and is coming rapidly from a distance. Obviously, the massacre in Kokoja village has ended, and all the villagers have died tragically at the hands of these fishmen. Chapter 50. A fierce battle breaks out. Ron vs the evil dragon. Evil dragon. Seeing the person coming, Nami's expressionless expression was completely unbearable. While her body was trembling slightly, her eyes were red, and the hatred and murderous intent in her eyes could not be concealed at all. Although it is undeniable that those in Kokoja village took advantage of her and used her 8-year-old child as a tool. But all this also stems from the emergence of the dragon pirates. Even his adoptive mother, the only woman who treated him sincerely, was killed by the evil dragon. For a moment, Nami wanted to cut him into pieces. But she also knew very well that she could not be the dragon's opponent. She subconsciously turned to look at Ron beside her and said, "Ron, can you help me? I want to kill the dragon with my own hands, no problem." Nodding, Ron knew what Nami meant. For a pirate as sinful as evil dragon, Ron didn't have any psychological burden, but more of a murderous intention. Thinking of this, Ron said, "Leave it to us." After saying that, Ron stepped forward and his figure instantly appeared in the area in front of Luffy and others. At this moment, the cold light bloomed. It can be seen that the bodies of several fishmen on the way forward were stiff, and then their heads rolled directly from their necks to the ground. Tick tick tick. Blood fell to the ground along the blade. Ron stood with the knife in his hand, looking at the dragon pirates who were coming in a hurry and said, "Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, let's go together. Usopp, Johnny, Joseph, you go to Nami's place to protect her safety." Good, good. Hearing this, Luffy, Zoro and Sanji all nodded. The three of them and Ron are obviously stronger, and the next battle against the entire dragon pirates should be dominated by them. As for Usopp and others, although their strength is not weak, Nami is not good either and must be protected by someone. Thinking of this, the three of them quickly followed Ron and rushed towards the dragon pirates. Good, no problem. Seeing this, Usopp, Johnny and Joseph all nodded. They could also see that the fishmen who came this time were not comparable to those of the previous crew members. As far as their strength is concerned, they cannot keep up. That is not a help but a burden. Kill them for me. Seeing Ron and the other four rushing towards them, the eyes of the leader of the evil dragon were filled with murderous intent at this moment. The tragic death of more than a dozen Murlocs was something that they could not accept for those who hated humans so much. Now they only have one thought in their minds, and that is to cut Ron and his group into pieces. Kill. Kill. Hearing the evil dragon's words, Xiao Ba and other Murlocs behind him also responded. The next second, a group of fishmen rushed forward. Jung. The blades collided, and Zoro and Hachi fought together as swordsmen for the first time. At the same time, Kruby, Pissarro and other members of the Fishman pirates also besieged Luffy and Sanji. More fishmen attacked Ron. After all, when they came just now, they had a clear view of Ron killing 3 fishmen. Human, die, human, pay for the life of my companion. Humans, go to hell. In the blink of an eye, a large number of fishmen were approaching Ron. Seeing the figure standing with a knife, they all raised their weapons to attack, as if they were going to hack Ron to death. Don't overestimate your capabilities. In response, Ron snorted coldly. With a thought, the power of the lightning fruit is activated. In an instant, endless lightning emerged and began to spread around under his control. Chidori Ryu, sizzling, sizzling. The sound of birds chirping could be heard endlessly, and it could be seen that where the lightning passed, a fishman was affected and hit by the electric current. Even the fishman's physical fitness, which is about 5 times stronger than that of a human, could not withstand the evolved dark blue lightning. For a while, screams resounded continuously. Under the ravages of lightning, a famous fishman collapsed again, twitching all over and foaming at the mouth. However, their bodies are stronger than humans after all, which also means that Ron's lightning cannot completely destroy them. Demon fruit power. In this scene, all the evil dragons arriving at the venue can be seen. For a moment, the murderous intent in his eyes became more intense, and he immediately shouted, "Everyone, get out of the way. Leave this guy to me." As he said that, the evil dragon uprooted a big tree from the side, and then smacked Ron without hesitation. Cut. Seeing this, Ron waved the long knife in his hand. The sword drawing technique was activated and the big tree was cut into 2. At this moment, the figure of the evil dragon appeared in the area of the field, and punched Ron in the face without hesitation. Human, die. Nice speed. Seeing this, Ron disagreed. With a thought, he didn't even activate the super speed force, but just mobilized lightning to stimulate his body. With a flash of dark blue electric light blooming, the evil dragon punched the air and saw nothing in front of him. At the same time, Ron's figure had also appeared in the area behind him, and he raised the long knife in his hand and stabbed it out without hesitation. Chidori Thorn. In an instant, lightning wrapped around the blade, and under Ron's control, it pierced the dragon's waist. Severe pain hit, and the evil dragon's face was instantly distorted. Especially when the lightning was raging inside his body along the blade, it made him want to die. But just for a moment, the evil dragon calmed down, turned around suddenly, and hit Ron regardless of its own pain. Are you okay? Seeing this, Ron frowned. The fishman's vitality is indeed strong, and even his attack just now was not fatal. Without hesitation, Ron abandoned the nearly destroyed blade and retreated suddenly to avoid the dragon's attack again. Damn humans. I underestimated you. At the same time, the evil dragon did not pursue it, but stretched out his hand to pull out the somewhat broken blade that was entangled with lightning. Then, his eyes were fixed on Ron, with a hint of fear in his eyes besides murder. The power of devil fruit is really good, but lousy as a fishman, and your strength is no match for me. With that said, the evil dragon stretched out his hand and took out a small bottle from his arms, which contained several scarlet pills. That's a vicious medicine. Seeing this situation, Ron was stunned at first, and then his face turned pale. He knows how powerful this thing is. In the original work, the fishman's strength will be greatly improved after taking the poison. Although the fishmen who took the poisonous medicine in the original work were also suppressed, Ron and others now cannot reach the strength of the Straw Hat Pirates in the original work when they entered the Fishman Island. We can't let him eat it. With a cold gleam in his eyes, Ron accelerated towards the dragon attack without hesitation.